never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's pro football focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam. So who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo back here with Sam Monson, and we are previewing all of the Week 13 NFL action. How you doing, man?
Good. You?
Great.
Yeah, excellent.
Don't forget you got a cough button here if you need it.
Got it.
All right? Mm-hmm. Whole new world here these last couple shows. I'm sure people have noticed the difference.
I didn't have one at home this morning and sneeze live on the radio.
Oh,
it was one of those ones, it was coming, and you're like, I can get through it, and then bam, just hit.
You have a mute button on your phone.
Apologies. Yeah, but you can't mute mid-sentence. I was talking at the time.
You don't use headphones?
No, God, no.
What?
God, no.
What do you have,
just a phone.
You have like a dial-up? A rotary phone? You have the old school?
No, I take the phone, and I put it to the side of my head, and I speak into it.
We live in
and
a
then I remove
here.
the phone from the side of my head when I'm finished with the call and place it back on the table.
We live in a hands-free world here, man. You could do that. Anyway, yesterday we previewed the Saints and Cowboys. So if you're tuning in for some Thursday night preview, listen to yesterday's show. I hope you have all the right games in the doc. Do you have everything?
I'm not going to make any promises, but I put the games in.
Well, we're going to go through all the games right now for Week 13. Can't believe we're this late in the season. It's post-Thanksgiving. This is when the real football starts.
The real football starts.
The real football.
Remember to keep sending us emails for, anything really, but charity suggestions in particular, where we can donate to and the thing that we shall be doing. Now, remember, look, it's Steve's turn. So generally, these should be punishing Steve in some way, shape, or form because I, just had the baseball thing. Admittedly, that made Steve look potentially worse than me, but
could be competition.
These are the realities we deal with. Well, the alternative is we have some form of competition, but since it's your turn, I feel like you should be getting punished here. Anyway, email us nflpodcast@pff.com, and those will give us the ideas.
We've had some good ideas in there, some that you didn't want to try.
Like what?
The Richard Sherman one.
It's not that I don't want to try it. I just think that I don't know that he's going to be that into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, somebody suggested that you and I try to complete passes against Richard Sherman. We fly him out, and we try to complete passes. Me at quarterback, you at receiver, vice versa.
That's the biggest problem here.
I think that would be hilarious.
The biggest issue is the person throwing the ball.
That is, I doubt that's the biggest issue.
I 100% think that's the biggest issue. I've seen your accuracy on display, both with the football and with the baseball, and regardless of how tightly I'm covered, there's no chance of me catching the ball.
If Richard Sherman, I think if we had Bruce and we ran route combinations against Sherman, we'd have trouble.
If Richard backpedal blew his Achilles out, we would still have no shot of me catching the ball because you would put it over in Brazil somewhere.
Stop it. I have 2 or 3 good football throws in me.
Yeah?
I could get it to
But
you.
how many do I have to suffer through before those 2 arrive?
The problem is separation against Sherman. The problem, certainly separation, perhaps, press coverage, anything like that. But that would be pretty funny.
I did back when I was back in the playing days in the old Irish Football League, I watched a guy literally not be able to get off the line of scrimmage, one-on-one receiver DB drills. He was going up against a corner that was like 6'2". He was like 5'7", and you kind of look at these people that arrive for training, and they're like 5'7", weigh like 150 pounds, and you're like, that guy must be fast as hell. Otherwise, what in God's name is he doing here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he wasn't. So he just literally, it's like quarterback, hut, steps back, drops, looks over, and the dude is still there, getting like, pressed at the line of scrimmage, not able to get off. Eventually, the quarterback's just like, let him go. just let him. That could happen.
That's a bigger problem than the actual.
I don't know if it's a bigger problem, but it's certainly a problem as well. I'm just saying that if we were running this on air, I wouldn't have a tremendous amount of confidence in you putting the ball in the same vicinity as me.
Stop it. Maybe I'll train for this one.
Yeah?
Anyway, that's something that's on the table that you don't think Sherman to be a part of that.
I don't know.
Like, if I moss Sherm, you think that's going to affect his
I mean, if you moss Sherm, I don't think he's getting another contract from the NFL.
Or maybe I am getting a contract from the NFL. Look at it both ways.
That'd be hilarious.
I could be the next Ali Villanueva. 6'10" receiver.
The next Villanueva. You certainly could be the next Villanueva the way he's playing this year.
Oh, come on. Let's get to the games. Bills, Patriots, absolutely the game of the week. Monday Night Football. New England at Buffalo. And Buffalo's favored by 3, which, of course, means we think the people in Vegas believe this is a...
the man in Vegas.
The man in Vegas who sets the numbers.
The Vegas man.
That they believe that these are 2 even teams here. By the way, last week's was not good.
Not even that. I'm
sorry. You were 7-8 last week against the spread. I was 4-11.
So when you say not good, it's very bad for you, not so bad for me.
Pretty average for you. Pretty average. We both lost money.
Which for me is a massive improvement.
Unless I went all in on the.
That's true. It depends where you put your money.
Depends on where your confidence is. Anyway, Patriots, Bills. What are you looking for in this game here?
It's actually not even that they believe that the man in Vegas believes it's an even contest, because I think Vegas has been baking in this idea of home field advantage being less now than it used to be. So Vegas, the man in Vegas, actually thinks that the Buffalo Bills are still the better team between the two. And in abstract terms, he might not be wrong, but in this specific matchup, I think he's very wrong. I think that. So what we saw last week with the Saints is that Buffalo is still a really good team. Like, if you don't have the things required to specifically cause Buffalo problems in terms of personnel and the game plan, the scheme that you run, they're just really good, and they will still stomp you. But if you do have those things, we saw what the Indianapolis Colts were able to do to them. And I think the Patriots are actually reasonably well equipped to do exactly the same thing. They have a powerful offensive line with dominant run blockers that can just crush Buffalo up front unless the Bills have figured out a fix to that in the last couple of weeks. They also have a defense that is now playing a lot more zone coverage and is always good at converting what they do to take away the thing that the offense wants to go to and force them into an area of struggle. I think the Patriots are going to be only too aware of the idea that that there is a blueprint to beat Buffalo or to at least cause them problems on offense, to stifle them, force them into the underneath stuff, make Josh Allen be patient and conservative, and they have the capacity to establish the ground game. So I like the Patriots on both sides of the ball.
You love this matchup for New England. I've heard you talking about this. You've been teasing this for a while, that you're in on New England in this Buffalo game. First off, from a Bills standpoint, Tre'Davious White out for the season. They have the number 1 coverage grade, PFF coverage grade. Patriots are second. So this
not
is
just grade, but
2.
like in basically every passing metric you can come up with.
It's the Bills.
Buffalo is number 1.
So losing Tre'Davious White is huge. And then I go back through the years. I do believe, even though you're saying on paper the Patriots match up well against this Bills defense, there have been times in the Sean McDermott versus Bill Belichick era where the Bills were the team that really gave the Brady Patriots the most trouble in 2017 and 18 and 19 when Brady was there. Last year, though, we saw a little bit of both. We saw the Patriots really run all over the Bills in their first matchup in Buffalo, but then Cam Newton fumbled in field goal range in crunch time. And then the Bills absolutely destroyed the Patriots on Monday Night Football last year. So we've seen a little bit of both from these teams.
In the last few years, he's been dealing with a couple of MVPs in Tom Brady and Cam Newton. Now he has the great Mac Jones to carry things, so it's different.
It is different, yeah.
By the way, I only discovered recently, I thought that the McCorkle thing was like a joke, right? Just he looks like somebody that would be named McCorkle. You know what I mean?
Was his real name.
I didn't realize that was actually a middle name of Mac Jones.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Somebody voluntarily named this guy McCorkle.
And now he's trying to brand MJ10.
MJ10.
Yeah. It's like TB12, except it's Mac Jones' initials and his number.
I see that, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's MJ. It's the new MJ. No more
It's
Michael.
a fairly established pathway of people that have been named MJ, and they have a higher profile than you.
Look, he's just really trying to solidify that Brady comp.
They weren't number 10, but still, I would think about leaning somewhere else.
So you mentioned the Bills in every passing metric, whether it's PFF coverage grade, they're number 1 in EPA allowed in the passing attack. Patriots are third. Are we just going to see a defensive battle because those are the strengths of both teams? Two good all-around teams.
Well,
defensive battle. And if the Patriots run the ball, are they just going to run, take a lot of the clock, and not necessarily finish? Finish the drives.
I understand it.
With touchdowns.
I get it. It was strange phraseology.
Yeah, I do that sometimes.
Yeah, that's fine.
We talk for 8 hours a week.
That's fine.
You say some odd stuff where people's going to be like, oh, you said something stupid.
It's not a problem.
Thank you.
Everybody makes questionable decisions with the words that come out of
You
their
said
mouth
something
sometimes.
stupid the other day. I remember it.
Regularly say
I don't remember,
stupid things.
but sorry. Answer whatever I just said.
Yeah. I do think that New England's defense is definitely going to slow down that Bills attack and potentially force them into some significant mistakes. The question is whether the Buffalo Bills can do the same thing, because again, I'm going to keep referencing this Colts game, but that is the last team we saw able to go out there and just establish dominance on the ground, and they racked up 41 points.
But don't you think?
And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were dealing with some injuries, and they racked up points against the Colts as well. Like, there are teams like Buffalo that need the power element to their game, and I don't know that they've shown they have that this year.
Don't you think the Bills defensively know this, though?
Yeah.
They're going to stack the
right,
box.
But what is the answer to that, right? You say, oh, we got absolutely wrecked on the ground, so the great thing about run defense is it's largely a conscious determination about whether you want to stop it or not, because one of the biggest factors of stopping the run is just how many bodies are in the box or at the line of scrimmage. So if you're Buffalo and you say, we got wrecked on the ground, we need to fix that, we are just going to stuff 8 guys in the box every single play. That's great. You will probably do a much better job of stuffing the run, but you will open up the passing game, which no longer has Tre'Davious White at cornerback. You've got Levi Wallace as your number 1 now. Like, you are exposing those guys to big plays in man coverage all game long.
That is, as great as Tre'Davious White is, I've referenced this before, right? If you play a zone-heavy system, you are quite literally taking more pressure off your cornerbacks, right? You're putting more pressure on your safeties and your linebackers, and especially in a too-high shell with two high safeties. To your point, if they do start to play more single high, you're putting Levi Wallace, Dane Jackson, Teron Johnson more on an island. And their system has done a nice job, because every year we're like, oh, they should draft a number 2 corner. It's like, yeah, Levi Wallace is good enough. Teron Johnson's done a nice job in the slot. They just re-upped him. They've done a nice job of protecting those corners.
Right.
It's not that they don't ask too much of them, but they're just not exposed in one-on-ones like Patriots corners have been in recent years.
But now Levi's the number 1, and if they have to do what you're suggesting, he's now number 1 on an island, exposed against, receivers that aren't amazing. But basically, you're saying in order to execute that game plan, you would be rolling the dice on the idea that Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson, in particular, can cover New England's receivers one-on-one and not give up big plays.
Yeah, it's going to be a good that side of the ball. I think is going to be just a really good cat and mouse game, good matchup, and both sides of the ball. There's good strategy here on both sides. Bill Belichick has been, I think he was raving about Josh Allen and his improvement on when the Bills have the ball. And to your point too, the blueprint has been invite the run, and Belichick's been running that thing since the 90s, right? Invite the run. Hey, Thurman Thomas, go. It was against the Bills. Thurman Thomas, go get 100 yards. Go ahead. We'll beat you in the Super Bowl. That was back the Giants-Bills Super Bowl back in 91. So is that the game plan for New England here? I thought Buffalo, even though the yards per attempt and all that stuff weren't great, I thought they did a better job with Devin Singletary and Matt Breida against the Saints running the ball. They at least put it into the mind of the defense that we're going to try to run, whereas in other games we've seen the Bills just drop back 20 out of 22 plays to kick off the game. Are they going to invite the run in New England against Buffalo?
Yeah, I think so. I think you'll see them run that game plan that opens up the run game and opens up the underneath passing attack and says, okay, go and run a 10-play drive and put points on the board. We're good with that. If that's what you want to do, and if you're capable of doing that all game long, more power to you, but we don't think you are.
So what do you think? You just all in on New England here just because of essentially just the matchup? You just think they've got the answers against the Bills? Keep in mind the other fascinating element to this one. They're going to play 2 out of the next 3 weeks. So they're in Buffalo this week. They're in New England 2 weeks from now, right? Let me see. Yes.
Yeah.
3 weeks from now, week 16. So they're going to play the day after Christmas in New England. They're going to play this week, obviously, in Buffalo. So the strategic element and adjustments over these next few weeks are going to be really fun to watch.
One thing that's really interesting, the Patriots are already set up to play this kind of bend but don't break style of defense. They are number 1 in the NFL in scoring drive percentage, right? So the number of drives on offense, the opposing offense, that end up in points of any description. But they drop all the way to this is actually number 1 and number 2. The Patriots and the Bills are number 1 and number 2 in scoring drive rate, like essentially the number of which percentage of drives, opposing drives, end up in scores of any description. But they drop down in terms of touchdown drives. So I think they're already well equipped to play this kind of bend but don't break style of defense. And this is one where PFF green line, where the actual data makes a difference as opposed to us just rambling thoughts. PFF green line leverages all the PFF data and spits out A, what the betting market is, what the man in Vegas thinks, and then B, what the PFF data says the line should be, and therefore which team is more or less likely to cover that line. PFF green line, which you can get at 40% off right now using the promo code CYBER40.
CYBER40.
PFF green line agrees with me. It thinks that there is a significant edge towards the Patriots versus that 3-point line to Buffalo.
Man, so many fascinating storylines here, too. From a high level, last year, the storyline was, well, it's not the Patriots division anymore. It's now the Bills. The Bills are the next dynasty or dynasty in the AFC East. They've got Josh Allen. The other. We don't know about Tua, and the Jets didn't have a quarterback, and the Patriots didn't have a quarterback. And a year later, Belichick, who's won the division 20 out of the last 22 years, whatever it is, they're right in it, right? It is, and so the division is on the line. Number 1 seed potential is on the line. It is absolutely the game of the week. There's high-level storylines. There's a lot of great stuff in here. I do think ultimately I'm probably, unless a lot changes in the next couple weeks, I'm probably going to like New England to win it, both teams to split, Buffalo at home to win and New England to win at home. So I'll take Buffalo to cover this.
The Patriots are also the number 1 team in terms of touchdown allowed rate. They dropped to number 7 though in terms of successful play rate. So essentially, they will give you some plays between the 20s, or not even between the 20s. They will give you some plays in the middle of the field or in your territory, but when things start to tighten up, they're very good at stopping you scoring. So I think that essentially indicates that they're already pretty good at playing this style of, hey, we're going to give you those 7-yard plays, but you're going to have to execute 10 of them to get all the way down here and put some points on the board. And if Buffalo can't be patient and not create mistakes when that happens, I just don't see them putting enough points on the board. So, Patriots.
I'm going to sound really cliche here, too, though. Like, it is going to come down to the red zone, right? It's going to be like, oh, whoever executes in the red zone. But it's because of what you're saying, right? New England historically does a really good job of clamping down in the red zone. It's a very difficult thing to be good at year over year, but Belichick always has been. But the New England offense, especially earlier in the year, they're better now, but early in the year, they did struggle in the red zone. They moved the ball. They did fine. And that was like, remember, we kept coming out of games being like, hey, Mac Jones is really good. And they scored 16 points or they scored 15 points, whatever it was. And it was because they just were not executing a key third down or whatever it was in the red zone. Well, they are now because the Patriots are putting up a ton of points offensively and defensively, really, with some returns. So it's generic comment from every football analyst. It's going to come down to turnovers in the red zone. But I think of all the games, it legitimately will, right? And the Bills, that cat and mouse game is going to be great too because the Bills have Josh Allen, who they use as a runner. They roll him out, and he does a really nice job of breaking the pocket in the red zone and essentially breaking down zone coverages, those safer coverages. So I think, if Allen makes 1 or 2 of those plays, I'm banking on Josh Allen making 1 or 2 of those plays in the red zone, converting those drives. I think it's a low-scoring game in Buffalo, but I'll take the Bills to win this thing.
Okay. Mac Jones has been significantly worse in the red zone. Like, that's the one area where I think he is still, I don't want to say struggling, but isn't at the same level that he's been. When things tighten up, when the spaces get smaller, when the windows get tighter, that his shtick doesn't work as well yet.
Yeah, I think you've kind of seen that. It feels like that throughout the year, where they've done a nice job. They just have not. Even last week against Tennessee, they could have put that game away if they just converted one or two more plays in the red zone. So you're taking New England. I will take Buffalo. Staying in the AFC, a lot of good AFC games this week. Denver Broncos at the Kansas City Chiefs. This thing has been flexed to Sunday Night Football, despite the Chiefs being favored by 9.5. You got Andy Reid coming off a bye, which is always like the storyline. Andy gets these guys going during the bye week. But even before the bye, the real story here is Kansas City Chiefs defense just playing so much better. And not just playing better against Jordan Love's Packers. They did it against Derek Carr and the Raiders. They did it against Dak and the Cowboys. The Chiefs defense actually being good in recent weeks, and now does the bye turn this offense around?
Yeah, I don't want to throw those games out as the throw it out guy, but how many of those performances by the Chiefs defense are more a reflection of the offense they played? So you face the Jordan Love Packers, pretty self-explanatory. You faced the Raiders in the midst of their slump on offense when they didn't have the deep threat. They didn't have anything worked out. They were just in a rut. You faced the Dallas offense, which was still kind of in a funk at that point with no Tyron Smith, missing receivers. They just weren't playing the way they were playing earlier in the season. They have been on this slump for a while. So is that 3 games where the defense is right back where it's supposed to be, Super Bowl caliber defense, not amazing, but well enough to cause other teams problems, even good teams? Or are we looking at a defense that was ripped to pieces in the first X number of weeks of the season because they faced a whole bunch of good offenses, and then look like they've turned it all around because they faced 3 offenses in a funk or missing players that were important to them?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a huge factor, seeing what that looks like going forward. Do you think Kansas City's defense really just is the same mid-tier unit that they were last year? We saw levels of extreme, right? They were horrible early in the season. They've been really good in recent weeks. They're just somewhere in between.
Yeah, I mean, they are somewhere in between. I think they are slightly worse. I think they were significantly worse than last year. I think they now are slightly worse than last year. With
those adjustments, basically.
Have made some adjustments, like moving Chris Jones the hell back inside where he belongs. Signing Melvin Ingram is a significant move to that.
And that allows Chris Jones to play inside.
And Melvin Ingram does bring a spark to that edge. Like, he's the best edge rusher they have. Frank Clark all of a sudden has rediscovered how to find the quarterback. They have minimized the number of snaps that Daniel Sorensen is on the field for. Like, they've made all these little suggestions that we said, almost all, of the little moves from personnel standpoint that we said they needed to do before or earlier in the season when they were getting gashed. And they've ridden the idea of they're now through all the disastrous teams or offenses that they've been facing, and they're facing some much easier offenses. So I think they're kind of somewhere in the middle of the last few weeks and the first bunch of weeks. But I think overall they are probably slightly worse than they were a year ago.
All right, so now on the other side, you've got the Vic Fangio defense, which is essentially the blueprints that teams have been using. Like, play like Fangio, play too high, play with 2 safeties high, and
by the way, he hasn't done as much of that this year as you would think. But he has actually shifted.
He's adjusted a lot, but this is, I assume, he's going to go back to his roots, which is a lot of cover 2, cover 4, cover 6. Right? You've got 2 safeties, and you just kind of alter your coverage. Similar pre-snap look. He does a lot of safety rotation type of stuff. And the other thing is the way teams play single high, sometimes you keep the safeties deep enough, you almost get that too high effect anyway. You're almost still inviting the run. So I think we're still going to see a bunch of that. And how are the Chiefs going to adjust here? Because it is a pretty clear line for the Chiefs this year. The one team that went away from the blueprint was the Raiders, and they crushed them.
Well, the Raiders went away from it completely. Dallas
a little of both.
Yeah, shifted to it a little bit, but still don't really play that style of defense as their base. And by the way, they didn't score a lot of points against Dallas. So even like whatever Dallas did, it's not like you're looking at the Chiefs offense and saying, oh, there's another week where it was cooking again. Like, you know what I mean? The Raiders, they got it back on track when the Raiders definitely didn't use that game plan. Dallas split the difference somewhere, and the Chiefs' offense still didn't look amazing. So this is the first defense for a while where they're going almost certainly going to play that exact game plan, and we are going to get a much better gauge of whether the Chiefs actually have their swag back on offense or if they're going to struggle again the second they're put in the same situations. And I think that makes it really interesting. I'm kind of blown away that the line is as big as it is because of that.
People just aren't believing in the Broncos, though. I mean,
but how much
should you believe in the Broncos?
Define believe. Like this is almost a 10-point spread. If the Broncos put up 10 points at all, 10 points in the game, I would imagine they have a good shot of covering that spread. Like the Chiefs scored 19 points against Dallas.
Yeah, I know, but the Chiefs aren't. I mean, the turnovers again in the red zone by Mahomes and the whole thing, and the weird dropped interception by Kelsey. You're still dealing with a lot of those turnovers that
right, but again,
are tough to bank on week to week.
At what point do you stop saying that this is all going to disappear and everything's going to be rosy? Like, this has happened almost every single week this year, and part of it is because the Chiefs, they're not feeling it again. Like, they make these mistakes now.
You're just looking at this Broncos team that, didn't really, if you go back through their season, they started 3-0, then they looked like they didn't have a shot against the Ravens. They lose to the Steelers. And then, they go through this 4-game losing streak. They didn't have a chance against the Cleveland Browns on Thursday Night Football with Case Keenum. They lose 17-14. And then since that point, you sneak past the Washington football team and then all of a sudden destroy the Cowboys, get destroyed by the Eagles, and then come back and beat the Chargers 28-13 with, there's a pick six in there for them. There's a Hail Mary. I mean, they beat the Chargers pretty handily last week. So they've beaten, in 3 out of the last 4 weeks, an ascending football team, the Cowboys, with Dak, with their group in Dallas, and then the Chargers. So, I mean, the Broncos need to play those types of games. But I could also see one of the games where the Eagles ran all over them a couple weeks ago, and they didn't really have a shot.
Yeah, but
they were close in the fourth quarter, but they had
are the Chiefs capable of doing that? Like, the Chiefs don't have that kind of offense.
I am curious if. I saw Ben Baldwin. He puts a lot of analytics, a lot of numbers and analytics stuff out on the Twitter machine, right? And he's got this pass run ratio and stuff like that in neutral situations. And the Chiefs are still the most pass heavy team in the NFL. The Bucs are second, and the Chargers are third. So some teams that trust their quarterbacks, right? I do wonder if the adjustment coming out of the bye is guys, the strength of our team in Kansas City right now is actually the offensive line. It is, Creed Humphrey at center and Orlando Brown at tackle. It is the run blocking has been fantastic. I do wonder if they come out and run the ball a ton. And I'm not saying they're going to look like the Eagles running the ball 40 times a game. I do wonder if they become a little bit less pass happy. And then when you do that, maybe that does soften up the coverages a little bit. Let me use this phrase, right? We've heard coaches say, I want to get them into single high. I want to get the defense into single high because that is when you take shots, right? That is when you get one-on-ones on the outside. Do the Chiefs actually want to make a tactical move here and run the ball so much these next couple weeks that teams have to come out of this strategy that has taken away their explosive plays, almost to just set them up in the playoffs? Can they do that? Can they run the ball well enough, run for 200 yards and all that stuff, run the ball well enough to take teams out of this blueprint, so to speak?
I think they can, but I don't know that they will.
I wonder if that's the play, though. And I wonder if that's a better long-term play for the Chiefs. Show that we can run the ball, and I think this might be a good game to do it against the Broncos.
I think it probably should be, but I very much it feels like they don't want to do it that way. I think that the Chiefs want to sort of reestablish. They want to have the passing attack be the reason that the passing attack is getting its groove back on. They want to fix it using that methodology, not kind of using the run game to prop the pass game back up. It almost feels like you're sort of running away from the problem. But I agree that one of the things that style of defense does is invite the run. And the Chiefs actually have this really powerful run-blocking offensive line this year. The rebuild that they did on that unit has made it, either inadvertently or by design, into a much more powerful run-blocking unit than they've had over the last few years. If they just leaned into that and bulldozed some people out of the way, A, they would have some success, and B, it would force teams out of that type of defense for a while, eventually. because they have the capacity to do what the Browns do, right? Which is, if you're not really paying attention to the run game, they can rack up 7 yards per carry without you thinking about it. Now, they don't have a Nick Chubb or a Kareem Hunt. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not that type of running back, to be honest, but that offensive line is good enough that they can get some real success that way.
Here's a crazy number that I think shows the lack of explosive plays that the Chiefs have and why they want to do what they can to maybe get back to that. Tyreek Hill, in 11 games this year, has averaged under 10 yards per reception, which is a modest number, 10, right? I mean, it's like what tight ends average. In 7 out of the 11 games, Tyreek Hill has been under 10 yards per reception. You know, a guy that normally is 15, he's in the 14 to 16 yards per reception range for the season. They are just not getting those downfield plays. We know this, right? Part of it is they do like to throw Tyreek on the underneath stuff. They get him involved in the screen game. They throw quick outs to him and all that stuff. But if the Chiefs are going to be as dangerous in their playoff run as they were the last couple of years, need to have him as a legitimate big play threat, which he was in week 1 against Cleveland, but since that point, nothing. So that's what I'll be keeping an eye on, is if Kansas City does do something strategically here to kind of get those explosive plays back, and it might actually start with consistency on the ground. I don't think the 9.5 is that crazy. I don't know if I just always buy into the Chiefs. I just always think in any given week they're going to bounce back like they did against the Raiders, blueprint or not. So I'm going to go Kansas City here, covering the 9.5, because it's prime time. You get the best Mahomes on prime time, except that one time. Except that one time against the Bills. You like Denver. You like Denver, don't you?
Not to win, but 9.5 is a lot. Like, I just don't. I think that this is the first defense that's really going to put Kansas City into that box again and say, okay, you've had the bye. You've seen what teams are doing to you. Do you have an answer now? And I don't know that they do.
You're buying into the tactical part of the game in these first 2 picks here. That New England and Denver are set up to.
Part of it is tactical. Part of it is personnel. Like Denver are very good at not getting beaten over the top. Patrick Surtain, that's like his calling card. He doesn't really get beaten deep. They have the horses to get it done. They're well set up to run this type of defense as well from a personnel standpoint. So I just don't see the Chiefs offense putting up enough points to cover 9.5.
It's a bye week though. They've been practicing offense for the last 2 weeks.
By the way, do you know that Teddy Bridgewater has a higher grade this year than Patrick Mahomes?
Ooh, boy. He does.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a whole separate show. What do you do with Mahomes and his grade this year? Like, how do you even? Early in the year.
Here's the really amazing part, though. He has a higher PFF grade. He doesn't have a dissimilar big-time throw rate than Patrick Mahomes. This is Mr. Big-Time Throw Patrick Mahomes versus Mr. Hyper-Conservative Teddy Bridgewater. Their big-time throw rates are not dramatically different.
Mahomes is at 73.7 overall, right around 20th in the NFL. I mean, if you eliminate a couple, let's go to 50% sample size here. So it's 18th out of 30 qualifiers. So when you really tighten up the sample size, Mahomes legitimately in the middle of the pack as far as quarterbacks go.
Yeah.
It's an interesting list of players that he's near too, which includes Russell Wilson, Tua, Lamar Jackson, Jimmy Garoppolo. That's Mahomes so far this year. He's got more turnover-worthy plays than big-time throws this season, Patrick Mahomes. So remember, the 11 interceptions, while a bunch of those are like the last game that they played, right on Kelsey's numbers that bounced up, Mahomes has also gotten away with either fumbles or other bad passes, the turnover-worthy plays. From a percentage standpoint, haven't been bad because they throw the ball so much in Kansas City, but from a number standpoint, the 16 is, it kind of matches what his interception total actually is at the end of the day.
Yeah, like he's gotten unlucky a lot of times, but in terms of like relative to how many times he puts the ball in harm's way, he's actually about where he should be. Like he hasn't gone from, the last few years he's been incredibly lucky in terms of interception luck, turnover luck, versus how often he's put the ball in harm's way. He hasn't gone all the way to the other end of the spectrum. He's gone somewhere in the middle now. Like, this is the scary part for Kansas City, is that this is not some like ridiculous freakish run of bad luck that has to at some point regress back to normality. He was on a freakish run of luck that has regressed to normality. And okay, he might be getting slightly unlucky relative to how much you expect turnovers or turnover-worthy plays to become turnovers, but if there's regression to come, it is not a huge one.
To be clear, though, did he have turnover luck last year? Absolutely. He's still graded at 91 for the season.
Right.
He's
So
still
that's what I'm
graded
saying.
at 90. He's
Like-
still graded over 90 in all 3 of his previous years. In his turnover-worthy plays, where he had 23 turnover-worthy plays last year and 8 interceptions, including the playoffs. 23 turnover-worthy, 8 interceptions. The previous year, 20 turnover-worthy, 7 interceptions. The interception total never matched the way he was playing now until this season.
Right. So there's 2 problems at work. One is that he got very lucky with turnovers the last couple of years, and that has gone back to somewhere around normal. But the second problem is that that isn't even his biggest issue, is that he was doing that the last couple of years, and even if they were getting lucky in terms of them becoming turnovers, his grade was still off the charts because he was doing a bunch of good things to offset those plays, even if they had been punished with turnovers. The issue now is that he isn't, and he's in Teddy Bridgewater range of big-time throws. So even if it went back to the point where they weren't turning over the ball, you would still have this absence of big plays from Mahomes this year.
So I think Bridgewater, the higher-graded quarterback this year.
Higher-rated quarterback.
I have
points.
less faith in Bridgewater.
Of course you do.
than
Everybody
Mahomes.
does. But I don't.
It is Bridgewater's highest grade of his career, but I think he has to ball out in this game, and I don't know if that's happening.
I think he just needs to not screw it up, and they cover 9.5.
No turnover-worthy plays each of the last 2 weeks. To cover maybe, but I mean to win the game, and he's going to have to ball out, obviously.
Yeah, I mean I
as
don't
underdogs
think
here.
they're going to win, but I think they will. I think there's a lot of ways that they cover that line.
Working from home is more important than ever, and so listen up here. You can optimize your home office with an X chair and our many accessories to enhance your focus, productivity, energy, and comfort. What a deal they have going this week. Once you feel,
Oh, look, it's the white one that we have.
oh wow, you have a white one?
Yeah.
I got the black one. I got pretty standard. You see the headrest in there. You
Our
got
home office at home it's all very white.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Had to. It would look weird if it was dark.
Maybe I'll get one of those too. Once you feel the customized support of X-Chair's patented dynamic variable lumbar, there's no going back. That's the DVL. That's where you get the LMX massage and temperature regulation, exclusively designed and made for X-Chair. With versatile comfort and extraordinary design, X-Chair is awesome and fits any space. High performance, quality engineering, extreme comfort. That's why I love it. And right now, listen to this deal. You go to xchairnflpod.com now. That's the letter X, chair, NFL. Let's do this again. The letter X, chair, NFLPOD.com. Or call 1-844-4XChair for $100 off your order. We're back to $100 off. XChair has a 30-day guarantee of complete comfort, and you can finance your purchase for as little as $30 a month. It's xchairnflpod.com. Look at that blue one. I like that blue one. That looks great.
Look, the
mesh.
massage pod thing is there in the bottom left.
Oh, yeah. Look at that.
If we have,
The
if we have,
customization is fantastic.
if we have like a rich as hell listener who wants to buy that pod, let us know, because that would be amazing. If somebody actually snagged that thing, look at that.
If you're just filthy rich and
Right.
this $6,000
Just
is
filthy, stinking, disgustingly rich, and you want a badass, giant massaging pod thing, buy
get it.
one and let us know that you did it, because
Yeah.
that's incredible.
in fact, buy 2 and send 1 here.
I just want to be able to live vicariously through the person that did it, to be honest.
I kind of want to experience it.
Right?
That thing looks. Look at the video on
Yeah,
that thing.
it looks
Go buy
pretty
that.
awesome.
Use the promo code. You get $100 off. If you're watching on YouTube, check out the link in the description. Of course, you're
Just
seeing everything
Just
right
think of the credit we'll get from the X-Chair people if we sell one
now.
of
They'll love
those
it.
things.
You'll hear so many more X-Chair ads. You'll have so many more discounts going forward. You're doing it for the people of the NFL podcast.
for everybody else.
Yeah. If we sell one of these, we're going to have X-Chair deals forever.
Up to
You know?
yin yang, yeah.
Anyway, go check it out. I love it. I love the massage and temperature regulation. It is xchairnflpod.com. All right, we've got Joe Burrow versus Justin Herbert right down the street here in Cincinnati. This is fun. The 2 of the first-round picks from last year's draft, the 2 best quarterbacks so far from the 2020 NFL draft. Tua is making a move, Sam. Tua is making a move in recent weeks here. But it is Chargers at the Bengals, with the Bengals favored by 3. Some serious playoff implications, of course, in this one in the AFC.
Yeah. Cincinnati's run-in is pretty freaking brutal, so they actually need to snag a win or 2 if they want to make those playoff spots. Let me go find the what their run-in actually looks like. Carry on.
To me, it's another one of those challenges for the Chargers. And this is the theme of the NFL this year. Play too high, invite the run, and blah, blah, blah. But teams are answering with a good run game. The Bengals are the team they love when Joe Burrow throws the ball 24 times like he did last week. They want to run the ball like crazy. So on paper, Cincinnati's run game has a big advantage against the Chargers.
So they have the third hardest schedule from here on in, according to PFF's power rankings.
Who's they?
The Bengals.
Right. I'm just saying, sometimes you got to reiterate.
Yeah? People weren't aware of that when I said, let me go find the Bengals schedule, and then said they.
Pronouns get lost in translation
Just how
sometimes.
stupid do you think our listeners are?
No, you have to emphasize who you're talking about.
So, the Cincinnati Bengals
from Cincinnati
have the third hardest run-in from here on out. They start with the Chargers game, then they have the 49ers at home, at Denver, the Ravens at home, the Chiefs at home, and then at Cleveland in the final game of the season. So they're in a good spot right now, but if they want to lock up one of those wild card spots, it's not that easy to find, guaranteed wins on that schedule, and this is one that they would really dearly love to have.
Yeah, it's a huge game. And if you've been playing the tactical game here for the first two picks, do you like the Bengals? I mean, they're the team that wants to give Joe Mixon 25 to 30 carries. They were effective last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, they had some big plays by the defense in there as well. But it feels like this is a good matchup for the Bengals going up against the Chargers defense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good matchup for both offenses. Actually, I think. This could potentially be like a real shootout game between these two quarterbacks that everybody loves watching play right now. And it could be fun because of that. Like the Chargers, this feels like it could be a get-right spot for their offense. I think they have the firepower to put up some points. And Cincinnati's passing game is firing, as well as the run game with Joe Mixon, which they, as you say, that's what they want to establish and lean on. And the Chargers' run defense is pretty suspect. So I like this game. I think this should be fun.
From a grading standpoint, Joe Burrow is now up to number 3 in the PFF overall grades among quarterbacks, and Justin Herbert is number 4. Now, this is when if you guys have Cyber 40 or you have PFF Elite, I put it on the 50%. So it's about 250 drop back minimum. So you take out some of the lower qualifiers. So the battle of, we'll say, the number 3 and 4.
It's the same at 20%, by the way.
Is it the same? Okay. So I wanted to take some of the other guys out. So it's a battle of the number 3 and 4 quarterbacks. But again, the construction of how we've gotten there, if I told you at draft time that Justin Herbert's going to be the guy that's low big-time throws, low turnover-worthy plays, and Burrow was actually the guy that would be higher in both, right? You'd be like, oh, no, Burrow's a safer quarterback. Even though he's aggressive, he's safer. Herbert's going to be more volatile. But we've talked about this a bunch. The Chargers system, how much are they just throwing the ball underneath? The average depth of target for Herbert is like a 1.4 yards lower than Joe Burrow. Burrow's pushing the ball down the field a lot more. So you've got this play-action-driven attack in Cincinnati where they throw the ball down the field, take those shots with Jamar Chase. Herbert gets the ball a lot more in pass, as we mentioned, the pass rate much higher, and spreads the ball around and throws underneath. It's just an interesting dynamic because it wasn't what I expected in the draft coming out of these two quarterbacks.
Yeah, and it isn't even just like this year, because you can point to this year and you say, well, the Chargers offense has become a different scheme that's more conservative, and Joe Burrow now has Jamar Chase, so of course he's pushing the ball deeper down the field. Joe Burrow's average depth of target has basically stayed the same year on year, and Justin Herbert's average depth of target has been lower both years, a lot lower both years, and has gone down this year. It's like half a yard lower. But you're dealing, like, this is what they've been from day one. Joe Burrow has been more aggressive, and as much as we see these incredible throws from Justin Herbert basically every week, they don't come as often as A, you think they do, or B, they should. And I think, like, the Chargers really have their work cut out to figure out why that is. I know a lot of people want to put the blame immediately or squarely on Joe Lombardi, the offensive coordinator's shoulders, and say he needs to figure that out. But I think there's a part of this in Justin Herbert as well, and he needs to figure out how to get the most out of what he's capable of doing.
It is interesting that we spent the whole offseason talking about the Cincinnati offensive line as well. So first off, I mean, to answer your point on Herbert, I am interested to see what happens at the end of the season here. If they will the Chargers change at all? Because they're hitting a bit of a lull here, and at some point, tap into that arm strength and all that stuff. I can't believe even last year, remembering all of the great throws that Herbert made, and then going and seeing the big time throw rate not as high as perception. Like he has them in there. You can create offense. You might miss a few more throws, but you can create big time offense with big time throws, and Herbert has that in him a little bit more than what he's shown. The Bengals, after talking about their offensive line all offseason, they've done a really good job of protecting them in pass protection, but they're right middle of the pack as far as run blocking goes. But they've just had these games where they've run the ball like crazy. So I do think that will mesh well against this Chargers defense. It is interesting though. We talked about the Bengals offensive line all year, and they're better, at least in the run game, and they haven't had to pass protect the way maybe they had to last year, but there was a lot of games where Burrow threw the ball a ton. They're specifically going out there saying, if Burrow throws the ball only 24 times, 25 times, we're happy. And so the Bengals have been able to hide that line from a pass pro standpoint.
Yeah, like the line still isn't good, but it's not a disaster the way other offensive lines are. Like they have a pass blocking grade right now as a team of 59, which puts them 22nd in the NFL, which is like, but it's below average, but above that area where nothing is going to function because of it. And that really, they've done exactly what we preach, crept back toward average. They're not there yet.
They were closer. Yeah, they're definitely closer.
They're not even at average yet. They're still below average, but they've crept in that direction and taken this from a level where it's going to cause problems to a level where you can get it done. Which doesn't mean the job is done. You know, you can still do some work on that offensive line and keep making incremental improvements. But this is the thing about offensive line play, largely, is that it's just about not having a complete calamity on your hands. Like
the Panthers on Sunday.
Look at the bottom offensive lines in the NFL. Miami, New York, Carolina. Those are your three worst team pass blocking grades right now. And those are three teams where you would look at it and say, those pass blocking efforts have been the reason that those offenses suck, right?
Yeah.
Literally. Like Carolina couldn't get anything done last week because of that offensive line. Miami have had that all season long. The New York Giants, we've been saying all season that that's the reason Daniel Jones is not playing as well as he did earlier in the year. So that's your goal, is just get above that line. Just reach the point where you're not coming out of game saying we had no shot. The offensive line is a disaster. And that's what the Bengals have done.
What do you make of the Bengals at this point? We'll make our picks in a minute here, but we're a couple weeks removed from them losing to the Browns, 41-16. Of course, they lost to the Jets and Mike White. And then since that point, they go to Las Vegas, beat the Raiders 32-13. They take the Steelers to task last week. It was 41-3 until there was a late touchdown. The Bengals have been all over the place. They've now put 41 points up on the Ravens and the Steelers in 2 out of the last 5 weeks. There's a part of me that just has no idea what to make of the Bengals week to week and wants to take the Chargers just because I don't know if they can keep it going after last week's big win against the Steelers. I like the Bengals. There's a lot that I like about it, but can we trust them at this point is my question. They're 7-4 overall.
It depends, like against what level of competition. I think 7-4, like earlier in the season where it's, at one point they were the number one seed in this weird year where everybody loses games that they shouldn't and all that kind of thing. And at the time we were like, they're not a number one seed kind of team. And they're still not. I think they're potentially a playoff team, but as we said, that schedule gets pretty brutal. They're going to drop some games upcoming because they're probably not as good as the best teams in the conference. But like this is the kind of game where if they want to be taken seriously, if they want to make the playoffs, if they want to be able to win once they do, you need to beat a team like the Chargers. This was the game that sort of set the Patriots on that run, right? The first game where New England beat somebody that wasn't a gimme, that wasn't a team you expect them to beat, was the Chargers game. So if the Bengals can put a win against the Chargers, I think that's a statement of intent. But ultimately, I think that they feel a little bit like Miami last year. They're maybe slightly overachieving, but they're definitely moving in the right direction relative to what we thought was going to happen with this whole Joe Burrow and revolution and new regime.
We've got for ELO rankings Bengals at 11 and the Chargers at 21. I don't know. The Chargers are starting to slip, man, and they felt like the up and comer a few weeks ago, but they're starting to slip. I'm taking the Bengals here. Where are you going?
Same.
Green line agrees.
Excellent.
Again, if you don't have green line, we're not going to give every pick away, but go get it with Cyber 40% off. All right, Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll go rapid fire here for the next hour and a half. Ravens at Steelers, always a fun division game. This is that run. Like the AFC North is going to start playing each other a lot over these next few weeks. The Ravens on the road, favored by 4.5. And yeah, what's going to happen in this one? This is like right as we start to write off the Steelers, they bounce back, right? They're 5-5-1 right now.
Which is, I mean, that's the level, right? This is the Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season thing. This is where he needs to hover.
He's definitely going to steal one of these Ravens games, isn't he? Tomlin and the Steelers? I mean, one of the, did I say it? Ravens games?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they're going to do that, Lamar needs to continue to play like crap, which he's done for the last couple of games now. All of a sudden, Lamar is creating a ton of this was one of those ones. I was on Baltimore radio this morning, and they were asking me about Lamar. And I was like, I kind of want to throw out that Browns game because for some reason, neither quarterback could see defenders. They were both just turning the ball over left and right, and that felt weird. But that isn't a one-off game for Lamar this season. He has had a run of the last 3 games, I think, where he's put the ball in harm's way a ton and hasn't necessarily made a load of huge plays to offset that. He has 15 turnover-worthy plays for the season. 7 of those have come in the last 3 weeks or 3 games.
Lamar Jackson has had multiple turnover-worthy plays in 7 out of his 10 games this year. That's a huge number.
He only has 3 games where he doesn't have 2 or more turnover-worthy plays. It's nuts. And usually he's been able to offset those with a lot of big plays, but the Browns game, there was none of those. And again, like at some point, there's just too many potential turnovers to offset.
Lamar has been on the high end of volatility because of that. I mean, there are overall for the season, the big time throws have been there. The narrative early in the year from us was that, okay, this is the best passing offense that they've had, right? And especially with Rashad Bateman coming back and the Marquise Brown explosion really coming into his own as far as being a deep threat. But we just have not seen that as much in recent weeks.
Not even necessarily the best passing offense they've had, but the best passing offense they've had when they've been put in must-pass situations.
Right.
So like that MVP season, his passing numbers were incredible. His passing performance was really, really good. But the narrative was when you put them in a hole and said, you're down by 10 plus, you've got to pass now to get this done, that's when he wilted and when the offense collapsed. This year, he had a bunch of games where he was put in those situations and passed really well. Looked like that was a question that had been absolutely answered, but now everything else has fallen apart. He hasn't had a passing grade above 61.5 since week 5.
The other big difference in performance with Lamar Jackson, we saw this in the Miami game a couple weeks ago when they blitzed 60% of the time. Lamar Jackson's grade when blitzed versus not blitzed. When he's not blitzed, it's 79.3. When he's blitzed, it's 59.7. About 20-point drop in Lamar Jackson's performance against the blitz, and I think teams are starting to catch on to that. So I do expect Pittsburgh, who has not been nearly as blitz happy as they've been in the past, to get after him, right? I mean, this is the game to unlock Blitzburg and get after Lamar Jackson. And again, the way teams have been doing this have been, usually because he's got the same rushing grade against the blitz in no blitz, right? He usually finds that escape route and he can make you pay. Teams have been doing this with not only 5 but 6, and taking every rush lane from Lamar and making him throw. And you can get burned. Like he's not like he can make throws, but you would rather make him make that quick decision. Don't let him run and be accurate over and over and over again against the blitz, and he just hasn't done it so far.
You almost have to do it with 6. Like 5 gives him a lane, gives him a way out.
Yes.
And the last thing you want to do is give Lamar a way out against the blitz because that's a lot of space in behind. When you send 6, you can bottle up all those lanes and keep him in the pocket and kind of, have him choked up with no space to work. If you look at his grades, it's actually fascinating this season. Week 5, best passing grade of his season so far. That was the 442-yard, 4-touchdown. The box score numbers were out of this world. 140.5 passer rating against the Colts. No interceptions, 10.3 yards per attempt. Like all the numbers for that game were nuts. 90.7 passing grade. Then it went 61.5, 60.3, 61.0, 51.2, 35.3. Like he's been getting steadily worse since the one game that blew all the numbers out of the world.
He was coming off sickness last week. I know he wasn't good against Miami in the Thursday night game. He missed the game against the Bears the following week. Does the sickness have anything to do with Sunday night's 41 grade?
Well, the sickness might explain last week, but it doesn't explain the trend in that direction anyway.
It is a bad trend. I mean, it's dark green, light green,
and as I was
yellow,
saying, like I would be
red.
perfectly happy to throw that game out because it was just weird as hell. Like, remember that sequence where they couldn't run a play because people couldn't stop putting 12 guys on the field? It's like, what is happening in this game?
It was a crazy
then
game.
Neither quarterback could avoid just throwing the ball directly to defenders. So if you pitch to me that we get rid of that game from Lamar's season, I'm all for it. But that still doesn't explain the downtrend.
Here's another. The Miami game was such an extreme because they legitimately just rushed 6 over and over and over again. One was a safety, Javon Holland. It was a lot of zero blitzes, and that's not really the Steelers thing. They're not a zero.
It's not many teams thing.
Right. The Steelers are like a zone blitz. They like to rush 5.
Ironically, it's Baltimore's thing.
It is Baltimore's thing. But in that game, Lamar's time to throw is 2.35. That's by far the fastest of his season. Like they forced him to get rid of the ball. Other than that, he's usually up around 3. So I can't wait to see how the Steelers attack Lamar and if they do kind of come out of their comfort zone, not from a blitzing standpoint, but how they blitz against Lamar here. And on the other side, I mean, if you talk about quarterback grades, like Ben Roethlisberger hasn't really had a good game all season. So can they do anything here?
I mean, he just doesn't have – he's just done. Like, Ben Roethlisberger, Hall of Famer, great quarterback, at his best, incredible, all of these kinds of things. Right now, he's just an old dude that can't move around with a noodle for an arm and has to have, like, the fastest average time to throw in the NFL because the offensive line is lousy as well. You put all those things together, and you're like, well, what do you really expect from this guy? Not much, right?
No. Which is why I keep saying just keep chucking it down the field to Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson. And
I mean, sure.
I am simple-minded when it comes to this. Yeah, Big Ben's got 2 grades over 70.
Please tell me we can just chop that out. Just forget the in this area. Just I am simple-minded.
In this area.
Turn that into a little social
context
clip. That'd
free.
be outstanding.
No context.
In fact, meme guy could chop that up, right? Little 2 seconds of video. Just put the caption on the bottom. I am simple-minded. Steve.
You done?
Yeah, now.
If you follow enough Pittsburgh media, I mean, there was this stretch where Big Ben didn't throw any interceptions and all that stuff. In the stretch, there was a 5-game stretch where he did not throw any interceptions. He had 8 turnover-worthy plays during that time, including 3 against the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. They had been winning due to a little bit of luck. He had some turnover luck based off the way Roethlisberger was playing, but they were winning games pretty much despite him, and that started to catch up now in the Chargers game and in the Bengals game last week where he had 7 turnover-worthy plays over the last 2 weeks. So somehow they need to get better performance out of him because Najee Harris looks like a really nice running back. You just can't tell behind this offensive line that can't give him any space to run.
His grade, so if you don't filter the premium stats page and strip out the low number of guys, the low sample size guys, if you just leave it at everybody, you have to click through to the next 50 guys to get to Roethlisberger's grade.
Yikes.
He's below 50 in terms of grade. There are 66 quarterbacks that have attempted a pass this season, and Roethlisberger ranks 52 out of 66.
And we have him 30th out of 30 when I put on the 250 dropback filter.
Yeah.
So he's behind Jared Goff. The bottom 5 is Jared Goff, Justin Fields, Sam Darnold, Trevor Lawrence, and Big Ben. So if Pittsburgh's winning games, and they've won 5, it is despite their quarterback situation. So where you're looking in this game, I do think Pittsburgh's set up to maybe slow down Baltimore. I'm back and forth. I think the downturn for Pittsburgh was inevitable and due, but it also feels like one of those games that Tomlin steals in their season, right?
I mean, to me, it's all about Lamar. Like, can he have anything other than a terrible game? Baltimore wins. If he has a terrible game, now it's an ugly game. If Lamar plays like he did against the Browns and
then
Roethlisberger
Pittsburgh can win this game,
right? But not just that, but it's a miserable game if that happens. If he's playing like that and Roethlisberger's out here noodling the ball towards Chase Claypool and then just praying that he mosses somebody and makes a play, like, what are we even doing? This would be disgusting.
I should embrace Big Ben more. So who are you going to
as a fellow guy that can't generate heat anymore. I'm going with the Ravens. there's too much chance that Lamar is good and Roethlisberger isn't.
I did this last week. I'm the Tomlin game. Like he's over there debating whether or not they should have music. Him and Chase Claypool.
Not debating. Did you see him shut that down?
Yeah, he said he's a receiver.
Yeah, so Chase Claypool's like, hey, we played music. The practice would be more fun. And Tomlin is like, Chase Claypool's a wide receiver. I'm going to let him do that, and I'll run the practice. And I think that division of labor is appropriate.
It's a great answer. Definitely.
It's pretty declarative. Like this is not up for debate.
Yeah, Ryan, like all former Steelers and all that stuff. They're losing their mind. This isn't the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, they're just not that good. But this feels like the week where they answer the bell, they answer the call a little bit. I'll take Pittsburgh to cover.
They're another team. Like this is a division where the schedule gets brutal. You know what I mean? Like it isn't just Cincinnati.
It's all of them. Yeah.
I think the Steelers have the hardest run in.
Look it up while
Carolina
I tell everybody.
Does. Pittsburgh is second.
Second hardest schedule. So the 5-5-1 Steelers should be getting worse here.
Yeah, I mean they're going to have to struggle to stay at 500. It's not 500, is it? Because what does it do when it's a tie?
Under 500.
Yeah, but what is it? Do you know?
I think they call it a half win or something.
Okay.
For the winning percentage.
I don't know what their win rate is.
I don't know. They're above the 6-6 Browns though, I believe.
Of course.
Right. Football fans, I'm sure we all love an action-packed, high-scoring NFL game, but with the latest no-brainer from DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, you'll be a winner once a single point is scored. New customers who bet just $1 on any team to score can win $100 in free bets. It's that simple. If Sportsbook isn't yet available in your state, you can still get in on the NFL action. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes all season long with DraftKings daily fantasy sports contests, and DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF. Bet $1 on any team to score and win $100 in free bets. If they score, you score with promo code PFF this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And you see it right on the screen there. If you're on YouTube, go to DraftKings right now. Promo code is PFF. What'd you find?
Inconsistencies. If you Google thinks that the Pittsburgh Steelers are ahead of the Cleveland Browns in the standings, NFL.com has them below. Either way, they claim that they're 500.
All right. So they're a 500-ish team.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have half a win, that would make you 500, right? Because you get half a loss, too.
I suppose.
Good for ties. Gotta love ties. All right, we got some more games to discuss. Washington football team at the Las Vegas Raiders. Your football team is rolling right now.
Somebody had a segment today about like the Washington football team. They're the team nobody wants to face in the playoffs. Really? I mean, hey, they're probably not making the playoffs yet.
I think a lot of teams would be fine.
Even though my simulation had them making the playoffs, I still think it's unlikely.
Meme guy stepped up, man.
The simulation put them in, but PFF's data says they have a 35% chance of making the playoffs, which, if my math is correct, means they have a 65% chance of not making the playoffs.
PFF NFL podcast memes.
Oh, we're just dragging me live on the podcast now.
Yeah, this is you going through the sim. You would never take the Titans over the Texans, though.
No, that's true.
Or maybe that was his point, right? You're like, oh, I kind of took the Texans, but I really took the Titans. I think he gets the nuance.
Uh-huh.
This is bad podcasting from an audio standpoint.
Terrible podcasting from an audio standpoint.
But go check out at NFL_PFF. That's PFF NFL podcast memes.
But from a video standpoint, we're now capable of pulling mean guy stuff onto the show,
which is great.
To just being dragged on social media for it.
Yeah.
What the hell was I saying before that? Oh, yeah.
Something about the football team.
They don't have a great chance of making the playoffs still. And even if they did get there, I think most teams in the NFL would be perfectly happy to play the Washington football team versus basically any other side that makes it into the NFC playoffs.
Look, I'm guilty as well, but we should keep track of the teams nobody wants to play in the playoffs. Because I'm pretty sure, like, the Vikings, it's just like, who's the 6th or 7th seed that's, like, hot right now in week 10, 11, 12?
PFF Moo pulled out an article from, like, a year ago where somebody was saying the exact same thing about the Giants.
Giants are the team you don't want to play.
Nobody wants to play the Giants in the playoffs this year. Like, they didn't even, like, come on. The Giants sucked.
To be fair, the football team gave the Super Bowl champion Bucs a very good game in the playoffs last year. So,
better than anybody else gave them.
I mean, it was right up there with the Packers. It was right up there. The Saints had a good game until the end. way better than what the Chiefs gave them.
Yes.
So, yeah, the football team, dangerous.
But it's not like if you ran it over 15 times and said to the Bucs, which team do you want to play? You have 5 more shots at this. If you lose any one of them, you don't get the Super Bowl this year. Which team do you want to play? You think they're picking anybody other than Washington?
No.
Right.
So 2.5 for the Raiders here. The football team has been sitting on the ball, playing Service Academy football with their 16-play drives.
Service Academy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Army Navy out there. They take up the whole quarter. They take up 2/3 of quarters.
I love a good bit of triple option.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting the same effect by running Antonio Gibson behind this really good line.
Somebody emailed us recently asking, like, what would happen if an NFL team, like, fully committed to the triple option?
Lou Holtz.
The short answer, I think, is you don't have enough practice time to get that done anymore. Like, you can't commit to the triple option in the NFL because it would just take too long to bed in to the point where you can run it.
I think everyone's priors that the NFL's too fast for it.
I don't think that's true.
Correct.
No, I don't.
I think it's correct.
They've been running just simple read option looks for a decade, and teams still can't defend that. The option would absolutely work.
I think you'd have to pass more than 4 times a game, though.
If you were capable of running it to executing it to the point where you had mastered it, I think it would 100% work. The way like Navy is able to roll out there, or were before they changed, Georgia Tech, if you had that level of execution, it would, because the whole point about that is it negates speed. Like, it's designed because you have worse athletes than the guys you're facing, and you offset that by the fact that they can't find the football. There's a whole bunch of plays recently where, like, you know, these NFL linebackers are just standing there trying to figure out who has the ball with the 49ers offense.
Yeah.
It would 100% work, but you have like 6 hours of practice time to get this down. Like, we have to go from a West Coast variant to the triple option in like 12 hours of mini camp. Good luck with that.
So you don't think offenses could master it?
No.
I mean, think about defenses preparing for that in a given week.
Yes.
You literally don't see it.
But it only works if the offense is like 100% executing it. I don't think they have the time.
You would have to build your entire team to like the old school Broncos. Remember, like, everybody had a 300-pound across the board offensive line, and the Broncos were all like 280 because they were zone blocking and all that stuff. Now you can have a Trent Williams be 330 and zone block
still
fine.
Run like a freak. Yeah.
Right. But you'd probably have to have something like that. Bunch of, Shaq Mason. Imagine Shaq Mason. He'd be like the most coveted player in the league.
Yeah.
Coming out of the Georgia Tech system where he was good at it. But anyway, Washington is controlling the ball at a similar level as the triple option teams, which is helping their defense, but also just taking the ball away from opposing offenses. You got a couple really good pass rushes here. Washington's pass rush against a subpar Vegas line. Raiders' defensive line against Washington's offensive line is going to be a really good matchup here. So, you going with your run here? You going to go with your little Washington playoff run here? Are they going to win 4 straight?
No.
Oh, man.
Sadly.
Why not?
Why not? Because they're still not very good. I think that's the biggest reason. I think the Raiders' offense might be pulling itself out of the funk that it was in. I do think that Deshaun Jackson makes a significant difference to that offense, and now that they've reached the point where he can be on the field 40 times a game as opposed to 10 or 15, that changes their offense, and it gives them back the thing that they were missing. That gives them back that threat. It manipulates coverages. It means teams need to respect that and can't clamp down on Darren Waller and everything else they have going for them. And then Derek Carr becomes a better quarterback again. So I like that, and I just don't have a ton of faith in Taylor Heineke, much as I like watching him play. He's kind of fun quarterback to watch. He's just not great. This is interesting, by the way, in the trenches, because on one side, you've got a really good Raiders pass rush against a really good Washington offensive line. On the other side, you've got a really good Washington defensive line against a terrible Raiders offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I think both there's the Washington offensive line has a chance to do a pretty good job against the Raiders. I do think Derek Carr will face some pressure in this one. And again, we keep talking about the football team positively regressing defensively, right? Getting back to not the great level that they were at last year. They were really good last year, but they've been much better. I think football team has a chance to keep it rolling here, man. I'm going to take the underdogs in Vegas.
All right.
But keep an eye on the defensive lines in this one on both sides. So you're taking Vegas to cover the 2.5 as well?
Yeah.
We've got a lot of differences.
Good.
And I'm coming off of 4 wins, baby. Gonna need something.
4 whole wins.
Yeah, it was a rough week. San Francisco 49ers at the Seattle Seahawks. The Niners in Seattle favored by 3.5.
Without Debo.
Without Debo Samuel. Debo has just been electric these last few weeks. Wide receiver, playing running back, and looking like a running back when he runs it and being really good at it. Breaking defenses, as we've always talked about. So what are they going to do without Debo here in Seattle?
That's the most fascinating thing to me. Like, what does this offense pivot towards? Does it now run through George Kittle? Like, do they go back to him being, their primary target? Does Brandon Ayuk kind of pick up the Debo Samuel role? Because remember, last year it was like they had this collection of yards after the catch monsters, and that's where they were all like that. So does Ayuk step into that role and they start putting him in the backfield and start trying to get him those manufactured touches underneath? I'm fascinated to see what this offense will look like. Or do they kind of abandon that stuff and just start running a more conventional style of offense? Like Kyle Shanahan's offense, using our sort of advanced metrics, is by far the most unique offense in the NFL. It is twice as unique. I mean, that doesn't make sense from a grammatical standpoint, but it's like twice as unique as any other system out there, even though it shares family ties with a bunch of other systems. Nobody else is running anything like as weird as what Kyle Shanahan is right now. So do they, without Debo, do they actually come back closer to the pack and run something that bears a closer resemblance to some of these other Shanahan-type tree offenses?
Yeah, the rookie Elijah Mitchell's run really well. But again, when you have Debo Samuel, we've talked about this a lot on the show, when you have a receiver that you put into the backfield, you are just putting defenses into a bind because they have a cornerback, right? When they see Debo Samuel, they say, we match up with a cornerback here. Not necessarily in man coverage, but just from a box count standpoint and all that. And it just puts defenses on their heels. I like the Ayuk concept, right? Similar. He's not as like he's dynamic. He's not as hard-nosed maybe as Debo, as a runner. Like Debo is a grinder. He's going to get in there and try to run through people and around them and the whole thing. But Ayuk's got some dynamic ability. There is kind of a skill set to taking a handoff and reading things and all that. I don't know. That's why I don't think you could just take any receiver and do that. But I would be fascinated to see if they can do that. And then the defense for the Niners has been much better in recent weeks as well. But I think that's the key here. The Niners are the team that nobody wants to play in the playoffs, Sam. That's the team, right? Now, I said coming out of last week, whoever wins the Minnesota-San Francisco game, that's going to be the team that gets declared that you never want to play in the playoffs. So it's the 49ers.
And you were saying declared by you when you said that.
Yeah. Like that's what the people are going to say as well. I'm sure somebody said it this week. Nobody wants to play the Niners now that they're healthy and hot.
The Niners are ranked number 7 in PFF's power rankings. 7.
Yeah.
Like they're not a lock to make the playoffs yet, let alone.
But this is like your point last year with the Cardinals, right? If you flip the season, it went as expected, right? If you flip if you just take the Niners right now and they're 6-5, it's easy to just sour on them because they had injury issues early and they were just not good early. But they've become who we thought they were. Essentially, the NFC West, as a deep division, other than the Seahawks here, has become what we thought, which is the Cardinals are a good team. The Rams are still a good team despite their run here. And then the Niners are a good team. It's just the Seahawks that have disappointed.
Yeah, and they've lost Russell Wilson for a period. And now he's playing with mallet finger, so that you can at least explain that to a degree. I think the 49ers should be favorites in this game. They are favorites in this game. They will probably win this game. I am curious to see what happens with Russell Wilson and the mallet finger. Is he still playing badly? If the Seahawks lose and it sort of gets ugly, like how bad can this get for Seattle this year? I mean, obviously the season is already kind of gone at 3-7. We're talking about the offseason and what this means for them going forward, but like there's a bunch of weeks still left to play. How miserable can this get for them?
What do you want to see from Seattle down the stretch here? Because, I mean, is it inevitable that it's not going to be Pete Carroll next year, or inevitable that Russ isn't going to be there next year? What's going to make them all stay together?
I don't think it's inevitable, but I think that is dependent on how many weeks we got left? 5?
5 weeks left.
I think that's dependent on how the last 5 weeks go. 13,
6
14,
weeks
15,
left.
6 weeks. how the last 6 weeks go. Like if this completely collapses and they are miserable down the stretch and don't, win one or two other games, like the whole thing is bad. Or if they can sort of put a shine on this and sort of come out of this year on something of a high and be like, oh, if we hadn't lost Russell Wilson, it would have been okay. And yes, this has exposed some problems in the roster, but we now know what we need to attack, and we can rebuild and we can put this thing back together. But if this spirals out of control and they lose to the 49ers and they lose to the Rams and they lose to Arizona, the 3 division games they got left, and maybe they'll drop a game to Chicago and then beat the Texans and the Lions, that would be a pretty miserable place to be.
If you're a 5-win team.
If you're a 5-win team, which would give you this top 10 pick, except you traded it away, and now you're just left with this disaster of a season, that would get people fired, I think.
What, 4-12 with Russell as your quarterback? 4-11, something like that?
Yeah.
I just don't see that happening.
I mean,
I think they're going to play
Russell would need to get
here.
back to playing better, though. If I don't know how long mallet finger takes to heal, and evidently neither do they. But if it
Your
takes,
dad can't help with any of this.
I haven't asked him. He's done. I don't know how much experience the man has with mallet finger. But if he doesn't step up his game, if he doesn't get back to being Russell Wilson, they could eminently lose any of those games.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. I think they'll play better. I think he'll be better. I think the Shane Waldron offense is not the bigger story, but as big of a story for me. The other night was exemplified that. Couple big throws, nothing else in between. They got to figure that out. All that said, I think Russ will play better football at some point down the stretch here. So this is another one. I'll just probably keep taking Seattle until he looks better. Give me Seattle at home getting the points.
All right.
You're taking the Niners.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. It's going to be a crazy week here. Let's fly through the rest of these games, will we? Shall we?
Like rapid fire. God, why?
Giants, Dolphins.
Uh-huh.
Mike Glennon. God. Neck injury opens the door for Glennon to stick his head through. Giants at the Dolphins here.
From about 6 yards away.
Dolphins by 4.5. Mike Glennon was the first NFL player I ever saw when going to the NFL Combine. So the first Combine we went to was his draft person. Year. Yeah, I was hanging around the hotel. I was the first guy that I just looked at him and recognized him right away. And was, just walking through the hotel lobby, just kind of neck and shoulders above everybody else in the lobby.
Yeah,
as I was waiting to meet somebody.
Look at that guy over there that looks like a pencil.
Mike Glennon getting the start for the Giants here. Miami's rolling. They're going to blitz the crap out of them. Giants can't block very well. What's going to happen here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Mike Glennon has a tremendously better chance of having success in this offense than Daniel Jones did. Maybe they might not murder him in terms of saying, hey, quarterback behind a lousy offensive line, try and run into chaos for 6 yards. The Giants' game plan of getting their quarterback destroyed is remarkable. I would imagine they're not going to do that with Mike Glennon too much based off his lack of mobility. But you never know.
The way that the Giants have exposed Daniel Jones on keeper runs, and look, part of it's Daniel Jones too. He drops his head and plays fullback, right?
Yes.
But it's finally
on the other hand, they're kind of they are playing into that. They're running him on power style of runs, as opposed to just here's a keeper on a read option that gets you into space, and when the space evaporates, hit the ground. You know what I mean?
Which he did when he had that 70-yard touchdown, and he just hit the ground.
Well, the space hadn't disappeared at that point. But
oh, Daniel.
They've run him on a power play at the goal line and watched him run over Grady Jarrett. You know what I mean? That. Your quarterback shouldn't be doing that unless he's Cam Newton, and Daniel Jones is not Cam Newton. I don't know why they're doing that. He's way better at it than you would think, but dude, that's some serious hits he's taken.
Who would be running your flex bone offense? Not Daniel Jones here?
I would go and get all of those triple option quarterbacks that the league wants no part of or wants to make them like kick returners. Keenan Reynolds, what's he doing these days?
They have Keenan Reynolds.
Keenan Reynolds probably isn't busy.
You're just going to grab all Army, Navy quarterbaks and say, I'm drafting you to run my offense.
There's a whole bunch of free quarterbacks that aren't doing anything now.
Go watch the special on Lou Holtz trying to run this in 1976 and what happened with the Jets. I think it was rough.
Yeah?
I don't think it worked.
I would imagine not. But I genuinely
other
think,
reasons too, but I don't think it worked.
But I think it's the kind of thing where you need to have patience, right? One, you need to have, like, this is probably going to be more than a year to get this done. And two, you need practice time. And I don't know that you have that anymore.
I don't know how much we're overrating maybe ebbs and flows of the season and all that stuff, but the Giants defense had a few decent weeks in there at like a high level. They did a nice job against the Chiefs, did a nice job against the Raiders. They gave up a little bit against the Bucs, did a nice job against the Eagles. Can the Giants at least keep it close here against this Dolphins offense, which is they're finding their way despite their offensive line. We talked about a lot, and we had a PFF NFL Daily this week where I thought it was a great discussion talking about Tua. What do we know about him? There's still so much more to see, so these last 6 weeks for him are going to be absolutely huge.
Yeah,
Can the Giants slow him down a little bit?
Maybe. This is a big game for him because this is the kind of defense where, yeah, the Giants can cause you some problems. They're not terrible, but you should, if you're going to have any success in the NFL, even with this offensive line, this is the kind of team where you need to do it against. So what does Tua look like coming out of this game? Does he have another really impressive day in terms of accuracy and just not making a lot of mistakes, relying on Jalen Waddle to pick up some yards after the catch, all those kinds of things? If you come out of this with another good game, great. I think you're moving in the right direction. And the ultimate conclusion for Tua, I think, has got to be at this point that you're giving him another year because it's cheap, because there's no easy alternative that isn't going to cost you an absolute freaking fortune, and you don't really have a ton of better options. So let's give him one more season and then decide then. And maybe he's the answer, maybe he's not. But at this point, I think he is earning another year to see.
It's going to be another fun offseason trying to figure out, as much as we mentioned to the Chiefs, like, oh, your offensive line's not going to score points for you, Chiefs. But teams like the Dolphins, the Giants, who are playing each other, the Panthers, who, as I tweeted this week, one of the worst offensive line performances of our lifetime we were privy to last week. Those teams are how they're going to invest in their offensive line this offseason is going to be a huge storyline. From a Miami standpoint, as I said, blitzing like crazy. They're over 50% these last 3 weeks, including that Baltimore game. I expect more of the same. And I like what Miami's doing defensively. I'm going to take them to cover the 4.5 at home here against the Glennons.
Against the Glennons.
Yeah. This Giants rebuilds, though, it's going to be a fun.
Are there multiple Glennons?
I hope not. I think one's enough for the NFL. There is. There's a Sean Glennon played at Virginia Tech.
Oh, yeah?
Maybe he should be the backup. Who are you taking in this one? Giants or Dolphins with the 4.5 here?
Miami.
We're both taking Miami. Finally in agreement here. Tampa Bay Bucs at the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons are getting 10.5 at home in the Dome. And what are you looking for in this one? Cordero Patterson maybe playing some safety?
Yeah, I don't know quite where that's coming from.
It's on the depth chart, just saying. Is he on the PFF depth chart? I don't think we updated that. I don't think we put him at safety.
I mean, he's amazing, so why the hell not? But it would seem like a weird thing to be doing.
So we're putting together our free agent rankings as well. We'll have an update, I think up to a 75 next week. CP's he's a free agent, man.
Uh-huh.
Like, what's his value after what he's done this year as a running back, knowing he's a receiver first, now he's a running back, and he's just an explosive playmaker?
Well, this is another one of those questions where it's like, how many teams are capable of getting that out of him? Like, remember, it's like, what is the value of a player like Jamie Collins, right?
Yeah, all the Patriots players that were used.
In New England, Jamie Collins is a really good player and grades well. Outside of New England, Jamie Collins is terrible. So he's got what appears to be quite a lot of value within one team, but zero value anywhere else. So what does that do? Because a market of one is no market. It's just you're going there. So we've now seen a bunch of different teams fail to capture the potential of Cordero Patterson, at least to the degree that he is right now with the Atlanta Falcons. And even the Falcons, honestly, I think are still leaving some meat on the bone in terms of how much they use him. But does everybody else look at this and say, oh, look, that's what we were doing wrong. Now we can bring him in and really have something special? Or does every other team see him the way that the Minnesota Vikings, the New England Patriots, the Chicago Bears viewed him, which is like, yeah, this is a nice gimmick and a change-up every now and again, but that's it, like no more. Because that dictates the ceiling. But right now, he's like the most important player on the Falcons offense.
For sure. Yeah, because
including Matt Ryan.
They can't move the ball. They can't move the ball without him. Matt Ryan continues to be just a roller coaster ride. Last time we saw him was Thursday Night Football against the New England Patriots. I'm sorry, it was this week. I forgot last week all of a sudden. Last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, he still was not great in that game. Ryan's got this was what I call it, the Phillip Rivers season last year. Like the overall grade is pretty good, but Matt Ryan, oh my goodness, the passing grades. He's got 4 at 78 or above, and then a whole bunch at 4 at 60 or below so far this season. So Matt Ryan's been kind of all over the place, either really, really good or pretty bad, and they won despite him against the Jaguars last week. So another one of those games going up against the Bucs. It's the spread's up to 11 now, so it's a little bit closer to green line because we had a big edge on the Bucs. I think if you bet on Tuesday, you could get a big edge on the Bucs there per green line. So I think I like the Bucs in this one as well. They're coming off their win against the Colts, where it was Leonard Fournette, man, 3 rushing touchdowns. 1 through the air. A week after Jonathan Taylor was getting all the MVP hype, it's Leonard Fournette putting up all the touchdowns, showing, hey, sometimes it's just getting handoffs in the red zone. But Fournette has been a nice addition. His emergence has been a nice addition to this Bucs offense, just because they don't have to rely on the outside receivers and tight ends as much.
Green line shows you like the history of the line, so you can see where it's moving and how it's changed and stuff. This was a 10.5-point spread for 30 minutes, and it was the 30 minutes that I put the line into the document that we use.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
So you just caught it at the wrong time.
I don't know why it changed for 30 minutes, but there was a 30-minute period where this went to 10.5 from 11 in like the last 3 days, and that's the 30-minute period that I put the line in the document.
For the Bucs and their playoff run here, it's going to be all about health. Antonio Brown is supposed to miss these next 2 weeks at least. Still coming off an ankle injury. It looks like Ali Marpet is back at practice, which is huge because Bucs had their 3rd string, Nick Leverett, playing on Sunday, got whooped a couple times in the past game. So if the Bucs are healthy, I think they'll put points on the board against the Falcons here, and it's going to take one of those high-end Matt Ryan efforts. Patterson making some big plays for the Falcons to keep it close, but I'll take the Bucs to cover this.
It's a lot of points to be covering.
Last year in this game, I think the Falcons were up 17-0 in the first half at home. Bucs pulled away with a fourth quarter comeback.
I mean, we are
31 in the second half
with the number 2 versus the number 28 team in the ELO rankings. Number 3 versus 31 on defense. I don't like it. All right, I'll take the Bucs as well.
Take Atlanta, man. Do it.
No, you're not bullying. Last week you convinced me to bail on my pick of the Vikings, and they did exactly what I said they were going to do, and you convinced me to go the other way.
You finally got a Vikings game right. The one thing for the Bucs, though, they have, they fell behind early on the road against the Colts last week. They have not played nearly as well on the road. Now they came back and scored 38 and won the game against the Colts, but it took a couple turnovers and muffed punts and the whole thing. So the Bucs have not played well on the road this year. So maybe you want the Falcons.
Stop it.
Just saying. Arizona Cardinals at the Chicago Bears. Are we going to get Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins back? The Cardinals are favored by 7.5 here on the road against the Bears.
I hope so. I'm kind of fed up with this lack of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just don't want to see another Colt McCoy game.
I like Colt McCoy, but just not this many times in a row.
Yeah, and I think that the Cardinals would agree with you. Like, yeah, Colt McCoy's great. We really like having him as a backup, but I don't want to see 4 games of it. That means things have gone wrong.
If Kyler's back, the rust factor for him, we've seen this. Yeah, we've seen this from everybody. Every quarterback that's missed some time. Aaron Rodgers' 2 worst games are off the time he's had the longest layoff. His first game of the season, where he had the whole offseason, and we have
week 1 rust.
Yeah, week 1. Well, he was fresh off. He was just playing Jeopardy. He was hosting Jeopardy.
Hawaii.
He was playing golf.
He was in Hawaii.
He was in Hawaii. What was he doing in Hawaii?
I don't know, just chilling.
Yeah, so I mean, Rodgers was rusty in week 1, and then coming off COVID, he was rusty. Lamar Jackson coming off of sickness here. Russell Wilson with his finger.
Post-sickness rust.
I'm just saying that if Kyler comes back, what's he going to look like?
All right. Yeah. I mean, I think he'll look better than Colt McCoy. Is that what we're going for?
Yes, I think he'll look better than Colt McCoy. Yeah, that'll be fine.
Yeah. I mean, look, Arizona have really impressed me this year in terms of weathering that. Like, those are arguably the two most important players on the entire team to be missing. And they've missed them both at the same time for a run of games and have weathered those games pretty well. What, have they got one loss during that stretch?
Yep.
That's pretty good. And now they're still in pole position for that number one seed. At some point, they're going to need those guys back, though, to actually chase that number one seed and secure it, because I think the Cardinals would be a really fascinating team for the number one seed. Like, to have the playoffs go through Arizona in the NFC, I think would be a really interesting development, and I'm here for it. So for that to happen, we need Kyler Murray to get the hell back out there and see what that looks like.
Cardinals passing attack number 1 in EPA per play this season now. They've taken the number 1 spot away from the Rams. So even with Colt McCoy as a team, they are number 1. Defense has done a nice job. I think, going back to our preseason takes, or especially mine, one of my biggest surprises was Arizona in the secondary. Just, holding up and playing well. I think they've done some good stuff back there. And the Justin Fields development, is he going to be back as well? I didn't check if he's definitely back.
Fields?
Or not. Yeah. Because he didn't play on Thanksgiving. Feels like the Bears didn't play. So it was a week ago, but feels like they haven't played in a while. But if Fields is back, he's questionable. He was limited on Wednesday. I'll assume Fields is back because, we just hope he plays.
Practice.
What's that?
He's back at practice.
Great. If Fields is playing, the Cardinals do some interesting stuff on the back end as far as confusion and all that. So Fields has thrown the ball pretty well. When we saw him against the Steelers, you saw the flashes of that on Monday Night Football with the big time throws and what he's capable of. But I think the Arizona defense can give him some problems here.
Yeah, they're an interesting team to play for a guy like Justin Fields, because the challenges that he will face from Arizona are less, being physically overwhelmed that's happened against a few defenses, and more it's a mental challenge. Like, they're going to give him some interesting things to diagnose on the fly and see what he can do, and it'll be interesting to see how he fares against that. We've seen him before. Most of his problems have actually come when the offense is just overmatched, and his offense is getting physically dominated, and he can't survive that. I don't think that'll happen too much against Arizona. Chandler Jones probably has a pretty significant mismatch advantage, but overall, this will be a mental task for him to overcome.
So where are you leaning in this one? Let's assume, again, Kyler Murray. The Cardinals have the number 7 coverage grade. I think that's a huge asset going up against the rookie quarterback. Let's assume Kyler's healthy. Nuke Hopkins, either way, I think they'll be okay. But where are you leaning in this one?
I'm going to go with the Bears to cover.
7.5?
Yeah.
Is that updated right now? I haven't checked, but geez, man, this is tough. Bears at home.
Keep it within a touchdown.
Somebody mentioned in the YouTube comments potential weather game. I did check it before. Talking 40s, maybe some rain. That could be the equalizer for a dome team like Arizona here.
Fair weather team.
Yeah. From the desert. Never rains in the desert in Arizona.
They're
not going to know what to do.
Rains in the desert.
They're not.
Certainly never rains in the building.
Never rains in the building. Only in Los Angeles?
Yeah, Los Angeles.
Only in
rains
the
in
Chargers
the
building. Get some lightning coming through there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take Arizona. I think they're going to give Fields some trouble here. You're going to take Chicago to cover?
Yeah. A $5 billion stadium. We still can't stop weather being a problem.
We differ again. Eagles at the Jets. The Eagles are favored by 6.5 in New York against the Jets. What are you looking for in this one?
A Hurts bounce back game. Like, he was bad last week. And we've been coming off this run of saying, hey, the Philadelphia Eagles are on a charge. They might be the team that makes the postseason that nobody wants to play.
Nobody wants to play the Eagles.
And then just dump against the Giants. And not just dump, but Hurts was bad. And he'd been playing, pretty well this season overall. Certainly when they shifted the offensive philosophy towards the run game and were loading up on that, and Hurts had less on his plate, he'd been playing even better. And he's in that kind of Tua boat of, buying himself an extra year to see if he can take another step forward and maybe become the future here. That disappeared last week.
Isn't that one of the big storylines here for many teams down the stretch? I keep making the point that there's not a ton of teams who just need a quarterback, at least before the season. But you start to need a quarterback if Baker Mayfield has a season like he's having, or Jalen Hurts. You don't know. You're up and down. So you've got guys like Baker maybe playing for a contract. You have a guy like Jalen Hurts playing to see if he's the future. A guy like Tua, Daniel Jones. So you have all these guys that are starters, capable starters. They're top 32 quarterbacks in the world, but are they the guy that you want to roll with? I think that is one of the bigger stories. Taylor Heineke even. It is like one of the big stories of the last 6 weeks of the season is, do these guys earn a job or, whatever it might be. What happens with these guys? I think Hurts is very much in that boat here for the Eagles.
Yeah, I think the line has just changed. Like before it was, do you have a quarterback that can just play? Like, can the guy be out there and execute any kind of offense, or is this a complete and total farce with this quarterback out there? Now, there aren't really those quarterbacks anymore anywhere near starting jobs. So now the question is, well, okay, obviously Tua and Jalen Hurts can play and you can get something going with them, but how good can they be? Are they really the answer, or are they just the stopgap until we find a guy that is at that kind of level? And I think there's a bunch of teams that fit into that category. The two we just talked about, Heineke, as you said. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater I don't think is in that category. I think the answer is already no. You know what I mean? Even though he's having a career year, they know he's not going to take them to that next level. But It's the same idea. Like, he's in that bracket of he can clearly play. Teddy Bridgewater
top
is
32, man.
Capable starting quarterback in today's NFL. But now you want more than that now. Like, you want a quarterback that isn't just a capable starter who isn't going to be a complete and total disaster, but a guy that can be a top 10 quarterback and elevate everybody.
On the other side, speaking of quarterbacks coming back rusty, Zach Wilson coming off his injury. You could tell he was off last week, but he didn't play that much worse than he had been playing before his injury. What are we going to see from Zach Wilson? What do you got?
The breaking news that the Daniel Jones thing is not done yet. Daniel Jones' decision is in the hands of doctors now. Daniel Jones' neck is in the hands of the doctors.
We'll call your dad for this one now.
It will be a game-time decision whether Daniel Jones goes or whether we have to turn to Mike Lennon's neck.
Let's just go back, redo the Giants analysis.
No. We talked about it. Daniel Jones putting himself in harm's way.
Jones and Tua, though.
Giants putting him in harm's way.
Those are the two guys that we have. You've been comparing them a ton this season, right? The guys behind the bad offensive lines that have to prove themselves. So I kind of want to see it. I hope it's a Daniel Jones versus Tua game.
If it's can you imagine that Daniel Jones, the last time they injured him, right? It was like a power run and the first play of the game after he came back from concussion or something. Like, if he goes out there, the doctors finally clear him, the healing hands right before the game. It's like, the neck's good to go. Throw him out there. How long do you think it's going to be before they send him up the middle on a QB power play?
You're telling me it's Freddie Kitchens' second play call that got Daniel Jones hurt? He just took over for Jason Garrett. It's all Freddie's fault.
Was it that game?
I mean, last week he got hurt. What, second play? You said?
It was really early,
Freddie
right
Kitchens'
after he came
second
back from
play
concussion.
call. Wasn't that his first game calling plays?
Yeah.
Losing track of time here, but it's Freddie Kitchens' fault. Blame Freddie.
I mean, I'm just curious if he does get cleared, how long it'll take for them to injure him again.
Jeez, poor Daniel. Can we get on to Zach Wilson here? I want to see him against the zone-heavy Eagles offense. He tried to get rid of the ball quicker, but as I mentioned on the review show last week, the footwork is still a mess, and he sailed a pass into the flat. I always hate that. I remember all those. He sailed a pass in the flat. You got to take those gimmies. Wilson's got to get the gimmies here. There'll be some against this Eagles offense. He tried to get rid of the ball quicker. Time to throw is the lowest it's been all season coming off of his injury, but I mean, it's another guy that you want to see signs of life here down the stretch.
God, that's the phrase, signs of life. Just anything. Prove to me that this is not just dead and decomposing already. I just need to see something from Zach Wilson, and there's been so little so far this season. And look, it's clearly not all his fault. It isn't the best situation in the world. On the other hand, it's not the worst either. Zach Wilson has more to work with than some of these other quarterbacks that are struggling as well. And you wouldn't know it from his play. So, look, this is a guy who, I was thinking about this the other day. Now's the time where you're sort of revisionist history looking at these quarterbacks and you're like, well, which guy, nobody had it right, essentially, was what I was saying in my head. Everybody was convinced that Trevor Lawrence was the guy, right? The greatest quarterback talent since Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, John Elway, however far back you wanted to go, depending on how high you were on him. It was universally declared that Trevor Lawrence was the number one guy, and Trevor Lawrence looks pretty bad right now. And it's so nobody's right about this group. The only people that had a shot, there was the occasional contrarian that was you know what? Trevor Lawrence is not the best quarterback in this class. Zach Wilson
It's
is.
Zach Wilson,
Because
yeah.
Zach Wilson has the special that Trevor Lawrence doesn't have in the bag. He's got these mind-blowing throws outside the structure, and he's got the Mahomes thing. And there were people comparing him to Mahomes. You're like, so the only people that had any shot of being right hitched their wagon to Zach Wilson, who's been even worse. So nobody had anything right about these quarterbacks so far based off, 11, 12 weeks of action. But Wilson's just, there's been nothing. There's no redeeming features so far.
It's that preseason. I spent a lot of offseason hedging too and explaining around,
Really?
explaining Mac.
Doesn't sound like you.
Shocking. Mac Jones, a guy like Mac Jones being like, are we just lower on Mac Jones because of what's happened with Mahomes and Josh Allen and Justin Herbert and all that stuff? And maybe that is part of the answer, right? We just got so enamored with the recency bias of those quarterbacks that, Trevor's again in a different boat because he was like, I saw one high school throw from him and he looked like a number 1 overall pick. I think that's been declared since high school for him.
Yes.
With Wilson,
Which is probably part of the problem, by the way.
absolutely, it's probably part of the problem because again, I think Peyton Manning,
Like the priors on him were so strong that the fact that he didn't have so it's a little bit like Josh Rosen, where he was really good for a freshman, but then it never really got any better.
Yeah.
And then when you look at what that baseline actually is, like it's good for a freshman, but not that good.
Yeah.
Where Lawrence was way better than that. Like his baseline was so much higher, but it was a similar story in terms of really good right out of the gate, and then you never really got any better. Like even though that level was so high to start with, you would still like to see some kind of progression, right?
From a grading standpoint, Lawrence never had a season as high as Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, or
Baker Mayfield.
or
Kyler Murray,
Justin
or
Fields.
those guys that were at the very pinnacle of what we've seen.
But his freshman to junior year,
Right.
total body of work was in probably like a tick below Baker Mayfield's grades,
Yeah.
right? Because we had 3 years of Baker's. That's the trouble. For me, it's more like the facing adversity type of thing, right? I think there's so many good players that had to face adversity, and you look at, Peyton Manning was kind of like a wire-to-wire type of guy. John Elway was probably like a wire-to-wire type of guy, but there's other guys who just haven't faced a ton of adversity who it actually works against them. Whereas, the Bradys and Breezes and Rodgers and all these guys come up through, they battle stuff, right?
I just wonder if you would come to all those quarterbacks with zero context, like if nobody had told you that Trevor Lawrence was, since the guy has been like 17, we've known this guy was going to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. If you hadn't known that, how many people would have still had him as the clear number 1 in this class?
I think you'd still get there because there's enough of those special throws. Even throughout this season, there's enough of those just wow throws. It's kind of like a lesser version of what we're saying with Herbert. Like Herbert makes 1 or 2 throws a week. You're like, wow, that you don't see that one often. But Herbert doesn't do it often enough either, so maybe we're overrating it. Anyway, I want to see signs of life from Zach Wilson, especially against this Eagles defense. Other thing to keep an eye on, the Eagles rushing attack, which has been so good. If they stick with it, the Jets have the lowest run defense grade in the NFL. They should run over the Jets unless the Jets put 9 in the box here, which might not be a bad strategy in this particular game. Make Jalen Hurts beat you.
This is one of the few
over the top.
occasions where that probably does make sense as a defensive strategy. Yes, you're daring them to complete those big plays. On the other hand, if you're going to dare anybody, Jalen Hurts is not the bad guy to be daring to make those because that's where he struggled this year.
I hate all my picks this week. I'm taking the Jets to keep it close enough. 6.5. Cover the 6.5.
No.
Because on paper it doesn't make sense that they can stop the run, but I think they'll put 8 in the box and try, and I think Wilson might actually make some plays here. Week 2 coming off the rust and all. I'm talking myself into it.
No. This is like, who is it the Jets were a get-right spot a couple? Was it Buffalo? This is going to be another one of those where anything they do is going to work. The Eagles roll.
All right, you'll take Philly. Should I change? Should I go to Philly?
No. Stay with the Jets. It's a good pick. It's a great pick.
Colts at Texans. Colts favored by 9.5. They're coming off a heartbreaker against the Bucs, losing 38-31. They had it. They had the lead late into the third quarter. Again, some turnovers, muffed punt, and the whole deal. Colts lose. Playing Houston here. And what are you looking for in this one? Anything good?
No. We've reached the point in the week where it's like, there's some games happening, but
the next 3 games, by the way, we've got Indy at Houston, we've got Minnesota against the Lions, only 7 points in Detroit. and then the Jaguars and Rams.
Yeah,
with a 13-point
That's
spread.
what I'm saying. We've reached the point where it's like, yeah, these are some games.
I always say, let's lump them all together.
And there will be football happening, but, ugh.
In my on my TV setup, my eyes will be on these 3 games probably less than others, unless they keep it close. So, like, what can Houston do to keep this close? I think Indy's offense is, they're really doing a lot of good stuff. By the way, I mean, a lot of people complaining about Frank Reich not giving the ball to Jonathan Taylor. Warren Sharp on Twitter, Warren says some questionable things that I would disagree with. I thought he highlighted something that was smart this week, though, which was Frank Reich's press conference explaining why they did not just hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor with a lead in the third quarter, in the second half. And it's because they called run plays. They're called RPOs. And if you get a certain look, you're going to throw the ball. And they average 7 yards per attempt on those RPOs. So they actually did have an efficient offense. It's not as simple as handing it to MVP candidate Jonathan Taylor overall, like crazy. So if you're hearing people say, the Colts needed to run the ball more, I think they're a little off. I think Frank Reich had the right answers there.
Generally, I think people need to have a greater awareness of play calling is no longer here is the play you are running.
Yeah.
Go do it. There's a lot of options. There's often 2 plays called at the time. There's RPOs, which can be either or. There's the ability of a quarterback to check out of plays. Remember week 1, it was like, why didn't Dallas run more? Like, Dallas didn't run at all in the teeth of that incredible Bucs defense. Well, they had 14 more called run plays that Dak Prescott checked out of at the line of scrimmage. Like, these are all things that are not technically the play call, and yet if it doesn't work, you're blaming the dude with the clipboard,
Yeah, I also don't think, the Colts scoring 31 points for the game.
Right. I mean, that wasn't the problem.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Whatever. I generally
the complaint was that you got a Carson Wentz interception, Carson Wentz strip sack.
Yeah,
those happen because you're passing, right?
The weird, the reaction to that game generally was a bit strange based off what actually happened. I've never quite understood what happened in that.
Yeah. Anyway, I think Indy's too much for the Texans here. Are they going to cover the 9.5 on the road here? It's up to 10 now. Let's go 10. Houston's getting 10 now.
Yes.
Give me Indy. Greenline likes Indy as well. You like Indy?
Yeah.
Even with Tyrod?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, look, he rode it as far as he could, and then he threw the ball at John Franklin Myers last week, and,
It's over. Tyrod runs over. Minnesota at Detroit. Only 7 for this game. What are your thoughts?
I'm amazed it's as much as 7. We know full well the Vikings will play it closer than this.
So you're definitely taking the Lions this week. I can't talk you into the Vikings.
Yes, the Lions will cover.
Anything else about this game? Minnesota's last week was such a pivotal game, obviously, in the playoff push. Them in San Francisco.
They're still, despite their record, they're still not in bad shape. Like, if you look at the PFF power rankings, the 10,000 simulations has them making the playoffs 41% of the time. My simulation, for what it's worth.
You've got the Vikings losing every
No,
game.
no. I got them in the 6th seed. They make the playoffs as well. So, all of the available data is what I'm saying. Has them with still a good chance of making the postseason despite dropping that game.
I expect them to have a lot of success in the pass game again. I mean, Kirk Cousins coming off of his two lowest graded games of the season from a passing standpoint, even with the great stats against Green Bay a couple weeks ago. Had a couple turnover-worthy plays in that one. Last week was not great against the Niners outside of a really nice red zone touchdown that we talked about yesterday on the Big Time Throw Show. By the way, for all the people...
The Big Time Throw Show?
Yeah, because we talked about Big Time Throws. We put it into the title.
Don't try and make that a thing.
That's again. The Big Time Throw cast. That's different.
God, don't do that.
By the way, for all these Big Time Throw numbers, look at that. Cyber 40% off any PFF subscription right now. Tell them Steve and Sam sent you. But we were describing Big Time Throws yesterday. So if you're one of the people that have been asking for years and years, the millions of people that have been asking what's a Big Time Throw, how do you describe it, how do you separate them, we explained it on yesterday's podcast, the Wednesday show. But I expect Cousins him and Jefferson and Thielen to have a lot of success against the Lions here. And, Cousins likes to throw in a dome. They can throw in a dome. So I'm taking the Vikings to cover the 7, even though they do like to play close games against everyone.
The Cousins dynamic is kind of interesting now because we've thought for ages, Mike Zimmer's ideal game is one where they run the ball like a million times. Cousins has 18 pass attempts and completes 15 of them for like 200 yards and Vikings win, right? All of a sudden, like Zimmer is out there saying, He'd kind of like for Kirk Cousins to open it up. And if that costs us a couple of bad plays here or there, fair enough, right? Zimmer is actually pushing Kirk Cousins to be more aggressive and open that up. And Cousins, not only is he not necessarily doing that, but he's like actively saying, I'm not going to change my game. This is how I play. I'm not going to make forced throws just because the coach is saying open it up. It's almost like it's a reversal of what we thought was going on earlier in the year, where Cousins is playing incredibly well, but the coach is dragging him back. Cousins almost appears to be just stubbornly saying, I believe this is the best way of playing, even though my coach is telling me to go nuts with the passing game. And now you've got
which is the paint by, you always use paint by numbers for the guy on the other side, Jared Goff. I mean, Cousins is probably a better version of paint by numbers, which is he just takes what is there. Like, he goes through his reads, he does it well, he throws the ball accurately. That's what he does.
But that becomes really interesting with this idea of, look, Justin Jefferson is potentially getting frustrated with the plays that he's making. Like, if you've got your head coach is starting to get a little bit annoyed that you're not airing it out. Your wide receiver, your number one wide receiver and the best playmaker on your offense is starting to get pissed off at the fact that you're dirting the ball 3 yards in front of him, and you're sitting there going, I am steadfast in my approach. Everything is fine. I mean, at some point, read the room and make some adjustments.
If you rewind to 2018 when they first signed him, the Vikings were coming off of a few years of Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Bradford, and Case Keenum, who were all on the game management part of the spectrum, right? And Cousins was supposed to be a guy who can make a few more big-time throws, who could push the ball down the field a little bit more, take a few more chances. It is why we initially said, like, this is why they got him, right? Like, to bridge that gap from the conservative quarterbacks. It is interesting that he's been better. I mean, he's certainly been an upgrade over those guys in a vacuum, or what you would expect from those guys going forward. But there's this other step to take now, especially when you have a Justin Jefferson in a pass-first league. Like, feed that dude 15 times a game, including down the field, letting him go up and make plays.
On a season level, Kirk Cousins' numbers have been staggeringly consistent, certainly during his time with the Vikings. His big-time throw rate in the last 5 years has been 4.1 to 4.4%.
Yeah, it's all in the same exact rate.
Like almost identical. His turnover-worthy play rate is almost identical as well. 2.4 in the last 4 years, this time with the Vikings, 2.4 to 2.9%. His adjusted completion rate is 78.6 to 80.3. Like, he's been the same dude every single year. And the grade has flipped around a little bit depending on like when those plays happen, high or low leverage situations, garbage time, third down, all that kind of stuff. But it is actually amazing like how consistent he has been. And yet the Vikings are kind of coming to the self-evident conclusion that it's still not enough. And if it's going to be enough, you need to be different. You need to change your play a little bit. You need to start trusting the fact that you're actually really good and start forcing the ball a little bit more, because you're going to make it more often than not, and we will live with the fact that costs us some more turnovers. And everybody appears to be pushing for that except Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, so that'll be one of the storylines to see here in this game and down the stretch here. How aggressive will Cousins be? Because, yeah, I think, especially with Dalvin Cook, he's got the separated shoulders. I don't think that's going to keep him out too long, but I think you're talking about a Vikings team that want to throw the ball now. Zim wants to throw it. And he went for that 4th and 2 on the goal line as well.
I wonder if they're going to get Nwangwu involved some more after those kick returns. Now that you don't have Dalvin Cook for a couple of weeks, obviously it becomes an Alexander Mattison game in terms of the ground game, but he's a change-up now that you might want to start folding into that offense.
So much speed.
Right. See if you can get some of that game-breaking ability that Dalvin brings. Mattison doesn't really. So I wonder how much they're going to use him on offense.
Could make the Vikings really tough to defend. I think they'll have success against this Lions defense. So I'm taking the Vikings to cover the 7 here.
No.
Not doing it, huh?
I mean, they don't. They don't ever. They play close games.
Going to Detroit.
Yeah.
Where's the one thing Cousins has been? He's been below average under pressure for a few years now. Average to below average, under pressure. Lions have the number 28 pass rush grade, so I don't know if they're going to be able to do much to get to him, especially with some of the injuries that they've had on that side of the ball. All right, let's wrap it up. Right? Jaguars at Rams. Make sure we didn't miss any games. Jaguars at Rams. The Rams favored by 13 at home here, they're going to certainly end this 3-game losing streak, correct?
They have to, right?
I would think so.
How could they not?
This is their get-right game. I mean, look, the Jags beat the Bills a couple weeks ago. We're going to say this every week. Jags can be dangerous in any given week because they beat the Bills.
They can't.
A little 9-6 action.
They can't. Something happened. Some weird confluence of Josh Allen's broke the space-time continuum, and they dropped a game that they shouldn't have. But that doesn't mean anything for Jacksonville. They suck.
So now the Rams discourse has gone like completely the other way. We've got Eric on the forecast, as he mentioned, Rams-splaining to people, and his rant was making the rounds and all that stuff. So we're like the we're just like the simple, not the hot take podcast. We just pretty straightforward, normal views, right? There has always been an in-between view on Matthew Stafford. This whole time, we're like, people think he's either Dan Marino or just some loser who can't win a playoff game from Detroit, right? Like, there's no in-between. And we're like, he's better than Jared Goff. He's not Dan Marino. He's probably going to make this offense better, but the defense is going to regress. And, like, all that stuff has kind of come true now through 12 weeks. I guess my question is for the people, the analytics folks that we interact with are like, told you this Stafford move was terrible. What would have been a good alternative for the Rams? What's the alternative for the Rams rather than going out and getting a Stafford? Is it rolling with Goff again? Was it drafting a quarterback and keeping your picks? Like, what would have been an alternative an alternative option for the Rams here at quarterback going into the season? They tried to make an aggressive move, and it's kind of paid off. Like, their offense is better, but it's not what it was that first 10 weeks where it looked like a home run.
Yeah.
It's a loaded question.
Yes. I think the question for them is, so I do think that the first, whatever this was, 8 weeks, the first half of the season, it's not even half the season now, the first 8 weeks of the season showed the potential of what Stafford can do within this offense, which is not to say that Stafford was everything that everybody said he was going to be, because his PFF grade was never that great. This was kind of what we were saying before the season was a relatively likely outcome, which was Stafford has maybe a career year in terms of PFF grade, but it doesn't go to the moon. It stays at like 80, but the production is better. The Rams offense is really good. And I think that was like an extreme version of that. Stafford's grade didn't go up at all, and the numbers were through the freaking roof. Like, the Rams offense was the best offense in the NFL on paper. But now what we're seeing is Stafford appears to be regressing at the halfway point again, the way he does quite a lot. And B, the Rams offense is hitting that wall again, which is now, this is a constant. Every single year except 2019, where they were just bad from pillar to post, the Rams offense gets worse halfway through the year. And, anecdotally, there are NFL people out there that say that McVay has just not been good at adjusting. The NFL season is almost, you almost divide it up into sections, right? You have the first chunk of the year where you do what you do, they do what they do, and we see how it works. And then you reach a point in the season where there's enough tape and information out there about what you're doing that everybody makes adjustments. It's like halftime adjustments almost, but over the course of a season. And then the second half of the year becomes, to what extent can you adjust to the adjustments? And that's the area that Sean McVay has never seemed to be good at. And when teams start to figure out what he's doing and to start pegging it back, there's no next version. And if there is, it takes until the next season where he's had a chance to like go away, get into the bunker, figure out what went wrong, and fix it again.
Get into the bunker now.
Well, that's what needs to happen. So we're now looking at this, and all the blame is kind of going on Stafford, right? And there are people, and I'm guilty of this to a degree as well, the people that were pushing against the idea that Stafford would be this incredible quarterback that would go to the moon, and he'd be, he was going to show them that he's a top talent as well. He's Aaron Rodgers, but he's been Detroited. You know what I mean? The people that were pushing
with Calvin Johnson and Kenny Galladay.
I know. The people that were pushing that all the way through the offseason and were like taking those victory laps in the first 8 weeks of the season going, you idiots, how could you not see that Stafford plus McVay was going to equal the best offense in the league? Now that that's collapsed in the last 3 weeks, there's definitely a very strong temptation to be kind of like, did you not see what we were saying? Like, this has happened a lot already.
That's why I think the Stafford thing was the biggest story of the season.
Yeah,
but all that stuff added up.
The truth is somewhere in the middle, right? It's not just going to be a complete and total shit show from here on in. Stafford will jump back to some degree. It was never as good as it looked for the first 8 weeks. And now we're like, the Rams schedule got really hard in the second half of the year, but they've cleared a lot of those tough games already. That 3-game skid, the Titans, the 49ers, and the Packers represent 3 of the hardest games that they have in the second half of the year. Now you get Jacksonville. We expect them to win that game. Okay, at Arizona is a bitch, but then the Seahawks, the Vikings, Baltimore 49ers, it's more manageable.
That's not easy.
It's not easy, but it's
not easy at all.
It's more manageable. Like, they've cleared 3 of the toughest games they were going to have.
Especially depending on what Seattle is. I mean, after this Jaguars game, all of those are, everything's winnable, but all those are losable as well.
Absolutely. But I'm just saying that they have cleared 3 of the hardest games, and now they have a chance to kind of right the ship and figure out what is going wrong and maybe chart a middle course.
So Rams should win this game against the Jaguars, but all that stuff that we've talked about is why this Rams-Stafford storyline is one of the most interesting one, I thought, coming into the season, because of the McVay factor, because of the, McVay's first quarterback post-Goff, how much is it going to make the offense better? I do think they miss Robert Woods. There's also the OBJ connection here. Did that 50-plus yard touchdown unlock something with Stafford and OBJ? How effective can they be to add some kind of complement to Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee in this passing game? So I would just take a look at this whole adjustment piece. If they struggle offensively against the Jaguars this week, I think they're going to have some trouble against Arizona and Seattle and Minnesota in the next few weeks. So that's what I'll be watching for in this one. Will they cover the 13 at home, though?
But I think that's the storyline. As much as Stafford is going to be the focus of everything, the actual storyline for the Rams is this halftime adjustment that
X's and O's
they don't seem to be able to make every single year. And the only new piece of information this year is that Matthew Stafford didn't change that, right? A quarterback that may have changed the offense overall and unlocked some things that they couldn't do with Jared Goff. The same thing happens, which is when teams figure out what you're doing, you stagnate and you go backwards because of that. And Stafford doesn't overcome that. So, that's the only new piece of information here. But yes, the Jags are bad. They'll cover.
All right, so you're taking the Rams to cover this. And that's it.
Yeah.
We got all the games?
Probably.
If we missed one, we didn't miss one. You put them in the document. I trust you. There's what? 12, 13? Yeah, there's 13 games post Thursday Night Football. So we did it.
Seems right.
Well done. In a cool 2 hours, as usual. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Of course, we'll be back here on Monday morning. What?
Oh, look, we're getting memed again.
Another quick show. We're the Vikings. Look, no matter what happens,
it's 2 hours plus.
It's a 2-hour preview. It's a 2.5-hour review.
Yeah.
No matter what happens that week. Wait till divisional round and there's 4 games.
Still be 2.5-hour preview.
2.5 hour. 2-hour preview. 2.5 hour. Yeah, because we'll be talking about the Giants offseason quarterback moves or something. We'll find a way.
Or the triple option.
Or the triple option.
Yeah.
We started talking triple option. We haven't mentioned in a while is Hackenberg. We haven't mentioned Christian Hackenberg. That used to be the PFF drinking game.
He's fallen out of limelight now. There's no star. The XFL's coming back. The USFL's coming back. Maybe
there's job opportunities.
Maybe there's still a path
for Hack.
Don't
forget, Cyber 40% off any PFF subscription. I don't know when this thing ends, so just go do it right now. No idea when it ends. So
Hack's always kind of struck me as a Michigan Panthers kind of quarterback.
Who?
Michigan Panthers.
That's a team?
You're not au fait with the USFL
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, Michigan Panthers, the Houston
Generals?
Gamblers.
I remember the Gamblers.
The New Jersey Generals, right?
I don't remember the...
There's 8 teams coming back that are original franchises.
I can't wait till we have full coverage on this.
Express isn't one of them, though. That seems disappointing.
Yeah, that is sad. Anyway, thanks to everybody for tuning in. See you Monday morning.